What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto became the king of desire? And every girl in Konoha became his queen? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. A cold October evening, in the Konohagakure hospital, the young child Uzumaki Naruto was born. Unfortunately for this kid, that very same day, the village of Konoha was attacked by the nine-tailed demon fox, better known as the Kyuubi. The clans of the village fought desperately on that day to protect their homes and children, with many losing their lives in the fight. The child was of course oblivious to this, being newborn and without many thoughts outside of emotions such as fear, wonder, curiosity and anything else you'd expect a child to have. The Konoha shinobi, on that day they did manage to successfully hold the Kyuubi no Kitsune at bay long enough for Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, to arrive at the scene and save the village proper from destruction, and this also his newborn son. As he arrived on the scene, he already had pre-gained knowledge that was only further confirmed by the fury in which the Kyuubi ravaged the lands with. He decided on a course of action, and with that used his contract with the Toads to summon Gamabunta, the self-proclaimed boss toad. I hope you do not have plans for me to fight the Kyuubi no Kitsune, Minato. Otherwise you're incredulously stupid. Yondaime stands on top of the huge beast, a grim smile on his face. Don't worry old pal, all I need you to do is get me close. There's only one option here. I'm going to use that. Gamabunta's eyes widen. That? You mean, are you sure about this? Do you have the medium here? Minato shakes his head, a gesture the toad oddly enough notices regardless of the man standing right between its eyes. For those who have not seen a toad, its eyes cannot see something standing right between them. Nope. I'll have to improvise using my flying thunder god jutsu. I left one of my kunai next to my son. Oh, so it was a son? Congratulations. Minato grimaces, before returning his focus to the enraged Kyuubi. Thanks. Something is wrong, by the way. The Kyuubi isn't supposed to be this violent. Anyway, let's finish this. The battle between Hokage, monster and demon lasted for nearly half an hour. Only one more life was lost after Minato arrived on the scene, that being his own, and this with intention. He used a special sealing jutsu that he had developed, along with his teleportation jutsu, to seal the Kyuubi inside his infant child. However, during the battle a great deal of the Kyuubi's chakra was released. The tailed beasts were known to have as many special monstrous powers as they got tails, and the difference between the Kyuubi and the Hachibi was the Kyuubi's near-instant chakra regeneration. The clouds of chakra released would be near unseen by anyone, and with everyone being preoccupied with evacuating and rescuing the hurt, collecting the fallen, not a single soul noticed the clouds of dust that seemingly at random flew about throughout Konoha. There were dozens of them. Each breath of the Kyuubi had created many more. The Kyuubi's airborne clouds of chakra, upon the sealing of its owner, went on a silent rampage. It began searching for hosts that could eventually create the new nine-tailed beast, so a silent war began among the Kyuubi's chakra. Lesser clouds were defeated and absorbed by the larger ones, and at the end, the strongest ones broke off a stalemate once they reached critical mass. Afterwards, all of them eventually found suitable hosts, within small toddlers, newborn infants and in one case an unborn girl. As soon as Naruto, Kyuubi's container, grew to be self-aware, he noticed that he was disliked by the people in the village. Wherever he went, he got ugly looks, angry stares and/or evil whispers, and he distanced himself from his peers. Instead, he found solace in training and reading. And it also was through reading he found out about the Kyuubi incident 7 years ago, an event that intrigued him. The date of the attack matched the date of his birth. The whispers and dark rumors he heard about himself often referred to a demon child, or fox monster. He was not supposed to know, but the young child had an uncanny sharp mind and quickly drew the conclusion that he was somehow related to the Kyuubi incident. It wasn't supposed to be known to him at such a young age. However, since he had already begun the path to figuring it out, a few weeks later he was pulled into his mindscape in a dream, and stood in front of the cage sealing the nine-tailed demon. A rather huge cage, held in place by a tiny piece of paper looking like it could tear at the slightest breath of wind. Hello? Naruto called out, and he felt something gigantic approaching. It appeared on the inside of the cage, huge eyes filled with malice and a large, rather grim-looking mouth, or row of teeth if you will. "You called for me, Warden?" it taunted, and Naruto somehow knew it was unable to leave, knew it was the Kyuubi and somehow felt its anger and frustration at being robbed of its freedom. "You are the Kyuubi no Kitsune, are you not?" he asked, full of confidence. The Kyuubi couldn't help but grin. "Seems you're a smart one, at least. Could have been worse." The Kyuubi looks at the little kid, stays silent while thinking for a while, and then smiles. "I'm the Kyuubi no Kitsune, yes. I've been imprisoned here as punishment and as a form of rescue from the man known as Uchiha Madara, by your own father in fact." Naruto's eyes widened at this info, and at the event happening in front of him. The cage seemed to shrink as the Kyuubi continued to talk, until it appeared as no bigger than a grown-up. The Kyuubi also became smaller and smaller along with the cage, until eventually what sat inside the cage and looked at Naruto was a woman with fiery red hair and crimson eyes with pupils slitted vertically down. "I've been called the greatest among demons by some, a queen by others, a king by yet more unknowing souls. And even so, here I am, sealed inside a 7-year-old boy. All thanks to that dreadful man with his eyes. Twice I've been lured by him, twice I've destroyed by his bidding." By now, Naruto had sat down in front of the cage and listened to the woman intently. "Aren't you going to become angry or enraged or something right now? Or bored? At the very least try to run from me in fear?" she asked, and Naruto shook his head, while keeping his gaze in her general direction, afraid she might vanish into thin air if he loses her out of sight. "You're the first person to talk to me save for Old Man Hokage and Iruka-sensei, and even those are rare to speak with unless I've done something wrong." Kyuubi tried to suppress a smile and failed, warmth filling her eyes probably for the first time in eons. "Tell you what, kid. Let's work this thing to our mutual benefit. You're lonely, right? Always seeking everyone's acknowledgement and friendship?" Naruto nodded slowly at the woman, a little curious as to where she was going with this. "Well, I'm dreadfully bored without being able to do anything in here, so how about this? I teach you whatever you desire in order to gain their attention, and in return, you help me find a way past this little seal of mine, even if only temporarily. Could you do that?" It had been a month since that first meeting. The first thing Naruto had been taught was how to appear in his mindscape at will. Kyuubi was exceedingly patient when it came to teaching Naruto, and Naruto gradually learned better and better, becoming much smarter at a pace faster than even the little kid could comprehend. "Kyuubi-sensei, are you doing something to me? I feel like I'm somehow smarter or something." Naruto looked over at her curiously, and she looked up from her self-conjured book. "Well, if you really wish to know, yes I am. I'm giving off some of my own, I guess you could call it blood, releasing it into your body. It's yokai blood, so it'll make you smarter, stronger and more emotional. Which is the reason why I'm currently teaching you self-control and restraint, so you can control your greater emotions better." Naruto nodded, satisfied with the answer. In 1 month, Naruto had learnt the basics of chakra and its usage. He could walk on water, walk up trees, and other basic genin-level skills. Right now he was learning to meditate in order to focus his chakra, but he realized this was all part of a greater exercise to control his thoughts and emotions. Nowhere in particular. Sealing is an interesting process and also a very unstable one. Seals are written with ink, handmade, and every slightest deviation of the seal can have dire consequences. Even the unnoticeable ones. One tiny speck of ink missing here, an extra thin line there, and the results of the seal can be very different. In his haste, Minato Namikaze did a couple of pen strokes wrong while creating the dead demon-consuming seal to trap the Kyuubi within Naruto. Not that Minato would note the difference, as it was so minuscule only the after effects would be noticeable. Unfortunately, the after effects would be one of the things Minato would be unable to judge, seeing as this seal was his death. That the Kyuubi was able to speak to Naruto at such an early age could be one of the effects of the faulty seal. That the Kyuubi experienced the same pain as Naruto did, and had the same emotions, would be another. Regardless, the seal was impossible to penetrate. She could not channel her feelings across the seal, although her chakra was siphoned quite remarkably well, possibly because it was all with her. Were she to be released, she could reform as the Kyuubi. But she couldn't get out. All of these things pissed the Demon Queen off to no end, but she knew she had to make the best of it. In order to make her existence within this little squirt as good as possible, the boy would need bribes and gifts. Lots of it. Demons were not below bribing and blackmailing. They knew when to bow down to superior powers, and when to backstab their foes. That would be Demon Logic 101, and as the Demon Queen, she had had her fair share of head bowing, and more. Luckily humans were not like demons, and it would be easier to ensnare the squirt like this. Naruto was meditating. It was quite a boring thing to do, but it was better to meditate and stay hidden than being chased and attacked by villagers. He had no qualms about what they were saying. He knew he held a demon within him, and having accepted the demon's gift made him a demon too. But he would prove to them that he was better. He would make them respect Uzumaki Naruto. Hey Kyuubi-sama, what powers will I have? And when can I start training in them? The boy was already grasping how to contact the demon without accessing the dreamscape, and it hadn't been more than 6 weeks since their initial meeting. Well, first off, you'll be able to change your looks. I'll teach you a combat style that will fit you. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there's a clan here in Konoha that specializes in beasts, right? Ninken? You should observe their fighting style, as the style I will teach you is the basis for theirs. Also, your muscles should already be quite developed. You might not notice it yourself, but their density is several times greater than they should be at your age, meaning your punches and kicks will have quite an impact. Naruto grinned where he sat. At the Hyuga mansion. Hinata, I'd like you to meet your cousin, Neji-san. He will be your bodyguard starting from today. Her father smiled at Hinata, and the little girl lit up, smiling right back, and then turned her attention to her young cousin. She walked up to him and bowed. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Neji-san. The boy returned her greeting, smiling back at her. The pleasure is all mine, Haim-sama. Following tradition, he only straightened up after her, and as they began walking, he kept himself 2 steps behind, that is, until they rounded the corner and was out of sight from their fathers. Neji, please don't walk behind me. We're family, so walk beside me. Neji looked stunned and tried to protest, but even a 4-year-old girl's glare can intimidate a man. He quickly stepped up beside her, giving her an uncertain smile. I hope we can become good friends, Neji-Nisan. The Inuzuka clan compound. Nichan, Hana Nichan, the gray fuzzball known as Kiba Inuzuka, prince of the Inuzuka clan, was running towards his sister, a tiny white fuzzball running between his feet. Remarkably, the boy never once stepped or kicked the tiny one, a result of his training no doubt. The young girl turned to her brother and smiled as she saw the puppy. I see you got your partner, good work. Ah, look at him, isn't he sweet? Though not visible through all the fur, the puppy blushed at the girl's words, while Kiba picked the white clump of hair up and hugged it protectively. He's mine, you know. You got 3, so Akamaru is with me. That only caused a chuckle from the girl. Of course, little brother. I'm glad for you, and do take care of the little one. Akamaru, if my little brother acts up, you just come to me and I'll set him straight. The little puppy barked once in confirmation and gave an impression of grinning happily. The non-descriptive home of the Haruno family. Hiya, he-ya, hiya. A pink-haired girl was kicking and punching the air quite vigorously, while 2 adults were looking at the young girl in slight concern. Dear, I know you're afraid for your daughter, but this is what she wants, is it not? Maybe we should let her. The Yamanakas say that there's only a 33% chance she'll become a ninja, plus her best friend is going to the ninja academy too. The man's brows were creased in worry. Honey, I have already decided to let her go if she truly wishes. But a father's got to be allowed to worry for his own daughter, can't he? I'm going to enroll her into the academy as soon as she's eligible, if she still wants to. The man explained, before sitting down in front of his daughter. Sakura, I've got a present for you. The girl immediately stopped punching the air and ran over to her father. What is it, Daddy, what is it? The eager gleam in her eyes was not lost on her parents as they giggled at her antics. Well, since you really want to be a ninja, I went out and got you this. He handed her a small rectangular box. I know it's not your birthday yet, but I feel you should have this. It's only a training kunai, so it's not sharp or anything, but it's made of metal. It's very dangerous, so be careful with it and let us know when you're carrying it, alright? The girl lit up like a Christmas tree and started jumping and cheering. Yay, Yada, wait until Ino sees this. I bet not even she has a kunai yet. Omnipotence. One word to describe godhood. To have the power of omnipotence is to have the power of everything. But that in itself is a paradox. Omnipotence is used to describe the ultimate power, being able to create or do anything. Yet, if you're able to do that, you should be able to do something you can't control, which in turn makes omnipotence not omnipotent anymore. We observe two beings, Miyasha and Balshoden Aldemar. Miyasha is said to hold the key to omnipotence, while Balshoden is said to hold the key to omnipresence. These two travel across galaxies and dimensions, upholding the balance and order of the chaotic multiverse. They call themselves Chosen Ones, and the I wanna see it, Aniki. The deafening yell comes from a young girl, probable 1.5 meters, in her mid-teens with purple hair flowing down her back and wearing mist. Her body is shrouded in dark mist that seems to flow across her chest and forming a mini-skirt over her hips, constantly flowing around in circles and never revealing the slightest trace of skin underneath, while the rest of her body is available for all to see. She has a soft full-body tan and sandals of the same material underneath her feet, with fingerless gloves on her hands. The girl is shrieking like a banshee at a being at least half again her size and twice across, covered in a cloak of the same material, solid yet misty, although it covers this being's entire body where it only covers the girl's essentials at a bare minimum. The large being appears to give no reply, but the girl goes ballistic nonetheless. What do you mean we can't go? I want to see ninjas. I want to see demons. Now, as she stomps her feet, the ground underneath her cracks and crumbles, and in the distance a mountain is toppled by the tremors. I don't give a damn if there are hunters there. Besides, wouldn't it be best if we switched dimension if they're on our tail? It appears their argument would take a while. In another place, Naruto was, unsurprisingly, sitting on a rock and meditating. Naruto-chan, I think it's time for you to befriend your age group. While the adults might loathe your existence, their children should be taught to accept you. Consider this the first mission from your sensei. The boy nodded and got up from his prone position, stretching sore muscles and yawning loudly. Man, training the mind is harder than it seems. Got any tips for friends, Kyuubi-sensei? Well, as a matter of fact, atop a certain building in Konoha. Wanna watch clouds with me? The young Shikamaru Nara asked his to-be best friend Choji, who smiled and nodded, sitting down on the bench and leaning back, resting on his arms while he peers up at the clouds. Besides the two, the hulking form of Shuza Akamichi, Choji's father and best friend to Shikamaru's father, smiled at the gesture. You'll find him sooner than you think, my son. That was the moment Naruto chose to appear, using a Kawarimi jutsu to replace himself with a random loose rock lying in front of the three. Yo, he simply stated, looking at the three men. Neither of them seemed to appear shocked or, as Naruto noticed with a little bit of happiness, no hatred either from Shuza especially. You wouldn't mind if I joined you, would you? Shikamaru shook his head. Feel free, just keep the screaming to a minimum. By the way, Kawarimi? Naruto grinned and nodded. Took all my chakra, too. Lousy control, but I'm getting better. Shuza was impressed. Naruto, as far as he knew, was only 5 years old at this time, and already grasped chakra and basic jutsu. Quite impressive, Uzumaki-san. Well, I should be leaving, you three take care, alright? And Naruto, if you could knock some school knowledge into the head of my son here, I'd appreciate it. He laughed boisterously, Choji protested meekly, and Naruto smiled and bowed politely. I'll do my best, Akamichi-sama. As Shuza left, Naruto turned to the two boys lying back on the bench, before joining them and lying down too. While the three lazy kids rested, in the Hokage's office the third Hokage looked outraged. I cannot agree to this. This is just preposterous. I must respectfully decline Kumogakure's offer, and ask that you leave this village by tomorrow morning. If you do not, we will consider it an act of aggression towards Konoha. The diplomatic envoy from Kumogakure apologized profusely and agreed to this, hiding a large smirk on his face underneath his mask. Forgive me, Hokage-sama. It was the Raikage's orders I come here with this offer. I had no idea what was written. I will relay your message to him, and respectfully apologize for the inconvenience of taking your time. Get out, was the simple statement of the Hokage, and the diplomat eagerly obliged, fearing the old man's wrath. Truth is, the envoy was in Konoha for entirely different reasons than strengthening the alliance between their two nations. Heck, Kumogakure's Raikage wasn't even aware of him being here in the first place. And now to prepare for my true mission. The Hyuga heiress is the optimal target. She's weak, yet not helpless and fragile like the youngest Hyuga daughter. Taking an Uchiha is out of the question. Their eyes are too dangerous if the kid grows up to loathe us. The Hyuga it must be. Between dimensions. No, I want to see the frickin' ninjas Aniki. Now. The purple-haired girl was enraged and screaming like a banshee. The mist encircling her body was radiating off of her like an exploding pincushion, with the needles being spears of mist flying in all directions, over and over. The other being was visibly shaking from fear, frantically waving his hands in front of him, warding off the girl's wild yet effective punches and kicks. Suddenly the girl froze and looked up at him, her eyes shining with stars in them and a really happy, hopeful smile on her face. "You promise, Aniki? Honest to death and cross your heart?" He quickly nodded and she started jumping in happiness. "Yada, yada. We're going to see ninjas, we're gonna see demons. When are we leaving?" Not 2 seconds later the larger being was dodging, blocking and warding off the girl's attacks again. Back with Naruto, the trio of boys were now chatting about nothing in particular. All three were looking forward to the academy, and they envied Naruto for being able to go a year before them. Though Naruto just waved it off, saying he'd be nothing compared to the clan heirs that would appear in the year after. "I'm sure all of you are gonna be excellent ninjas. I'm lucky if I even pass, but I'll do my best. You already know the Kawarimi no Jutsu, you'll degrade Naruto-kun." Choji smiled encouragingly at the blonde, who scratched the back of his head and grinned. "I hope to learn the Bunshin and Henge before I join too, but I start next year so I don't think I'll be able to, not with my horrible control." Throughout the discussion, Shikamaru mostly just laid there listening, but he smiled nonetheless. After several hours it was turning dark. The clouds disappeared in favor of a brightly starlit night sky and the three boys said their goodbyes. Naruto walked in the opposite direction of the two boys. His trip home would take him past the Hyuga compound and his destiny. Kumogakure's diplomatic envoy was currently sneaking around the entrance to the Hyuga main house. While it is true that the Hyuga pride themselves on their eyes and have a near-perfect 360-degree vision, they only have that ability when they activate it, and even with activation the visual range varies from one Hyuga to another, depending on a myriad of factors such as training, purity of genes and skill. Without expecting to be invaded, guards around the Hyuga compound could be pretty lax on security, mainly because the branch house was often worked to death, which meant guard duty equaled rest, especially the night shift. After this night though, Hyuga would loathe guard duty. It was due to lax security in the Hyuga estate that the Kumogakure ninja even managed to sneak in, let alone get unnoticed, to Hinata's bedchambers and pick her up. Remarkably enough, the ninja managed to crash into the young Naruto Uzumaki, who was walking on his way home while fleeing with the Hyuga, which sent the girl tumbling into the bushes and the other two sprawling onto the road. At that moment, within the bushes and trees, close to Hinata's bound, gagged and rolled up form, the air seemed to ripple outwards from a single point. That single point cracked and tore horizontally and vertically, collapsing in on itself like a crushed mirror until all that was there was a dark portal about the size of a large person. "You little brat, I'm gonna kill you for this." The Kumo nin spat angrily at the Kyuubi container, who gathered himself and shook his head. "What hit me? Naruto, might I suggest you get ready to fight? This guy seems to want your head on a platter." Naruto nodded and got into a crouching position. Besides meditating, Naruto had done a little martial practice, mostly based on what he observed from the Inuzuka clan style and what Kyuubi told him to do. He had no doubts he was gonna get hurt, maybe even die right now, but he'd be damned if he went down without a fight. "Yeah, we're here. Oh, it's pretty dark, ain't it, Ani, Fuhump? Eat." The purple-haired girl looked down at what she'd tripped over and saw a sack. A moving, muffled, noise-creating sack. Question marks were popping her head. "Huh? What's that? Nissan, what the hell is that? That bag is moving. Oh my gosh, that is so cool." She quieted down and nodded as the dark shadow looming above her pointed to the road just beyond the bushes. "Something's about to happen? That's a grown man and a kid. They're gonna fight?" Naruto was outclassed and he knew it. He'd gained some speed and a few minor jutsu, academy basics for the most part thanks to Kyuubi's tutoring. But he also knew he had to do something to survive. "Kyuubi, I think it's time for me to learn to use your chakra, unless you've got a death wish?" "Hey, if you wish, kid. It's gonna hurt like hell, but I'll force you up a level." "Thanks." The air around Naruto began vibrating as he picked two kunai out of his side pocket asterisk. One in each hand and growled as his body morphed in front of the Kumo Nen. "You're gonna kill me?" He grinned evilly as his voice grew cold. "I get it, you must be ready to die." He gripped the kunai hard as pain began racking his body, making him shiver. His eyes went blood red and slitted, his teeth stretched, mainly his fangs elongated and his fingers and nails turned into claws. All the while orange chakra tossed around him, cutting the ground and whipping up a small storm. The effect was not lost on the former diplomat. The display made him freeze in his tracks as the massive key of the Kyuubi was flung at him. For a moment the man thought he saw a giant fox head floating in the air above the little boy. "Shit. Hey, Aniki. That boy's a demon. And a ninja. He's so cool. Oh my gosh, look at that." The girl was gushing over her newfound interest as he suddenly moved forward at a crazy fast pace, kunai ready to strike while the opponent was still frozen in fear. In the blink of an eye the little boy was behind the grown man who buckled over, one of those blades in his chest and the other still in the kid's hand, dripping blood. A cut opened up on the man's cheek as he fell down on the ground, paralyzed. All of the commotion just outside the Hyuga compound had woken up one Hyuga, Hiyashi, whom had witnessed the encounter between the Hinata's kidnapper and Konoha's Jinchuriki. The fox was out of the bag, so to speak. "You performed something dangerous out there, Uzumaki-san." Currently, Naruto was sitting in front of one of the most powerful men in Konohagakure, one called Hyuga Hiyashi, clan head of the Hyuga. Besides the man was his daughter Hinata, who looked a little bruised but no less worse for wear. "You were lucky this time, you caught the man off guard. At your age, while the speed was impressive, I doubt you could have taken him were he prepared. Well, one could say he underestimated you, meaning you did a good job as a ninja." Naruto was a little confused. Was the head of the Hyuga clan praising him? Hyuga-sama, if I may. I'm not sure I understand. Why aren't you trying to kill me, or run me out of here like all the others? Hiyashi smiled softly at the demon container. "Two reasons. First, you showed remarkable control over elements that you never chose to have, and second, you saved my daughter. Also, the Kumo Chunin has been sent to the I&T department, so we will find out who did this. I and my clan are in debt to you, Uzumaki-san. You'll always be welcome here for your deeds this day. The Hyuga are powerful allies, Naruto. You did a good thing, and the first great step to getting a good reputation in this world." Naruto smiled and bowed thankfully, silently nodding to the Kyuubi and giving himself a pat on the back. "Thank you, Hyuga-sama. Please, call me Hiyashi. Only if you call me Naruto, Hiyashi-san." "Naruto-kun, I'm not sure I've introduced you to Hinata yet, my apologies." "Hinata-chan, why don't you thank Naruto for saving you? I had to go talk to some guardsmen about proper routines." And with that, Hiyashi excused himself and left the two kids together. Naruto-kun. The young girl was blushing softly and lowered her head. Thanks for saving my life, Naruto-kun." Naruto was sitting there, looking at the young girl slightly perplexed as he wondered how a creature could be that cute. Nothing to thank me for. May I call you Hinata-chan?" As the girl raised her head, she nodded at him, before shyly poking her fingers together. I would like to. I am mean. Would you? The girl took a deep breath, which made Naruto blush from the cuteness of it. "I would like it if you could return someday. The Uchiha district. I hear you're going to start at the academy next year, Sasuke?" A teenager with raven hair and dark eyes, the obvious trademark traits of the Uchiha family, as well as teared troughs under his eyes giving him a sleep-deprived look. "Yeah, I'm gonna be as famous as you, brother." The smaller of the two brothers replied eagerly in the affirmative before starting to pester his brother to train him again. "Alright, why don't I show you my training?" Later, while training, Sasuke keeps talking about how he'd like nothing more than to be like his brother, and Itachi can't help but grow a little worried about this infatuation. "Little bro, come here." He waved his hand slightly, and as Sasuke ran up to him, tapped the little boy on his forehead. "You shouldn't dream too much about power. As Uchiha we'll always be strongest, so why not find another dream, when you have to work for?" "Then, what do you dream about, brother?" Sasuke asked, looking hopeful, to which Itachi replied with a smile. "That's a secret," he said in a sing-song voice to tease the boy. the reply to which was Sasuke clinging to the elder brother's leg and pouting. Tell you what, keep thinking about what you might want to pursue as you live, and I'll help you realize it. If it's a really good goal, I'll even tell you mine. Back with Naruto after leaving the Hyuga compound. Naruto, we have got to talk. The Kyuubi sounded a little distraught, which in turn made Naruto a little worried. If an all-powerful demon was stressing over something, then it couldn't be good news. What's wrong? No reply. He sped up towards his home, the looks of hate and disgust that normally stung him so and made him take back alleys and secret passageways completely forgotten, making him a target for annoyed Konoha citizens and stupid ninja, which in turn dictates that something bad would happen. Which it did. A black and gray tornado hit Naruto from the side, sending him and his assailant deep into an alleyway, Naruto crashing into dustbins as the spinning attacker stopped. He was a rather large man, scars crisscrossing his face, feral eyes and two long purple teeth like tattoos down the corner of his eyes, one on each side. An Inuzuka. Lucky. Seems like I caught myself a runaway fox. The man was boasting, loud and clear enough to be heard outside the alley, but nobody seemed to care after a single glance and seeing who was there. So, mind telling me why you were running away from the Hyuga compound, little mutt, or should I just beat it out of you? Naruto shook his head to remove the starts in front of him, groaning as he got up. That really hurt. He looked up at the large man and whimpered. He looked creepy, and so that blurted out of him, which enraged the Inuzuka. Hua, I look creepy, do I? The fuck, I really should beat you up. He stalked towards the cowering child who crawled back until he couldn't anymore. Wait, can't we talk about this? Naruto pleaded, looking like he was about to shit his pants. The Inuzuka man only grinned madly, and as soon as he came within reach of the boy he launched a kick that would break some bones. Naruto looked up from his position only when he wondered why the pain didn't come, and saw the man's leg frozen, no, the entire man frozen mid-attack. Naruto, run! Shikamaru Nara yelled to his friend, and it got him going. Naruto got up and rushed out of reach of the man and over to the young Nara. Come on, we gotta run, Shika. Both turned tail and ran as soon as Shikamaru dropped his jutsu, the Inuzuka tripping over his own feet as he got control of his body again. Damn brats! He yelled and took after them, running on all fours to catch up. He never got out of the alleyway as he was stopped by two Anbu whom he had the distinct feeling were grinning and looking pissed off at the same time, the cat and dog masks they were wearing making it impossible to know for sure though. He knew he'd regret this for a long time. See, can't we talk about this? Cries of pain and pleas of mercy could be heard for a good 5 minutes before two shadowy blurs jumped up out of the alley and vanished across the rooftops in the direction of the Hokage's office. Naruto's apartment. Oe, Naruto. What was that all about? An exhausted Shikamaru was resting on Naruto's couch, panting for air while Naruto himself had collapsed onto the floor. The reason I'm never around. He muttered from his face-down position, the words muffled but audible. Man, it must suck having the Kyuubi sealed inside you if this is what you're going through. Yeah, but it's not too bad. Naruto stopped talking and sat up, looking wide-eyed at the Nara boy. You know about her? A torrent of mixed emotions was running through him right now. Fear, anger, despair, hope, and he looked at the black-haired boy who seemed to know all those emotions and the questions behind them. I didn't, I guessed. I've heard the way others talk about the demon brat, when they think I can't hear them. You got whisker marks on your face similar to a fox. There's only been one demon close to Konoha the past decade, and your birthday is the 10th of October, the day the Kyuubi attacked. I'd read a bit about sealing some days back because my dad wants me to become a shinobi like him, so I just took a leap of faith. Naruto sighed and flopped back down onto the floor. I didn't know it was a she though. Naruto stiffened. How would you know, Naruto? I mean, what I understood was that the demon won't be capable of contacting its host unless the seal is bad or the host allows it. Is Konoha in danger, Naruto? The blonde boy turned over onto his back and looked at Shikamaru. Maybe, hopefully not. The seal isn't ruined or anything, I won't dare to touch it. But I am talking to her. Learning to use her power. Since I don't have any family or something I can learn how to become a shinobi from, I asked if she couldn't help and she agreed in return for not being in a stuffy cage. The seal works like a cage no matter how it looks, I figured, so I'm working on changing the way it looks to me. Ah, that's right, she needed to talk to me. Naruto said, sitting straight up and closing his eyes. Shikamaru looked slightly interested in this. Is there anything I could do to help? He shrugged when Naruto shook his head. Ah well, I'll stick around and wait if you don't mind then. Naruto's mindscape. Hey there. Naruto looked up at the Kyuubi. Since Naruto had little to no knowledge of how seals works, despite him trying to keep a constant mindscape, it kept collapsing in on him. Sometimes it would be a sewer, other times a bright, sunny forest, sometimes even Konoha or a massive mansion. Today it was a large field, grass stretching as far as he could see in all directions. Kyuubi was sitting under a single tree, the only one nearby, though in the distance he could perceive a forest which he knew was actually all his memories. But this tree was not one of Naruto's memories, it looked different. Take a seat, Naruto. We need to talk. He did as asked and sat down under the tree, next to Kyuubi. She was human-like, wearing dark orange clothing that hid next to nothing, and with fox ears sticking up out of her long, crimson and white-tipped hair. She placed her eyes on him, looking more serious than Naruto had seen before. Naruto, there's something I have avoided to tell you so far, about the way you're using my power. It shouldn't have been a problem at all, but because of your earlier escapade and use of my powers, there might be a small complication. Naruto could sense that she was avoiding telling Naruto exactly what was going on, but let her continue. It was probably difficult for her, judging by the tree's fluctuating colors. Her emotions, if Naruto was to guess. Naruto, do you know about hormones? He shook his head. He'd been reading some books at the library whenever he bothered to use a henge and enter, but no medical books so far, only books about social behavior and guides for aspiring ninja and stuff like that. Not really, Kyuubi-san. Why? Now, from the start of puberty, this couldn't have happened, but after you tapped into my powers, you received hormones along with my chakra. Us Biju demons are chakra that can manifest into physical form, and being the strongest, my chakra is the most potent. When you called upon my raw power, some of it turned into hormones that are now surging through your body. By all rights it should hurt like hell, but I'm doing what I can to deaden the pain for you. Naruto looked up at the tree and saw streaks of orange and blue crash here and there, regardless of the ever-changing colors. That's what the tree is for, isn't it? He asked, and Kyuubi just nodded. I'm glad you're as observant as ever. But the problem, as you may or may not see, is that I'm a female. You're a boy, but the demonic hormones within you will most likely change that very soon. As far as I know, I can't reverse this, so I thought you needed to know what will happen to you within a week's time. Naruto blinked. He blinked again. He shook his head from side to side and knocked on it, then probed his ear with his pinky before returning his attention to Kyuubi. I'm sorry, I think I've been more hurt by that Inuzuka than I normally am. It sounded to me strangely like you were telling me I'll become a girl within the week, and that can't be right, can it? He looked at Kyuubi with a mix of desperation, hope and fear. She didn't return his look. You're serious? A slight nod of her head. Holy, I'm gonna be a girl? Another nod. Naruto promptly fainted, and Shikamaru looked confused as Naruto suddenly just collapsed onto his back, but shrugged it off, continuing his vigil. He only reacted when Naruto's hair suddenly grew visibly in length. Not by much, but it wasn't continuously over time, rather instead a sudden jump from shaggy and semi-short to shoulder length and smooth. Okay, Naruto, that's some weird stuff you're doing. Mind waking up now, before I freak out or something? TCH, troublesome. Naruto did wake up a few minutes later, shaking his head before remembering the talk with Kyuubi. He cursed and looked around. When he saw Shikamaru sitting there with a strange look, he had to ask. What, Naruto? Mind explaining why you suddenly had a growth spurt? Haruno residence. Sakura, are you alright? Sakura's mother looked frightened at the young girl who was bleeding quite profusely from a cut in her hand, but the young girl just smiled. It hurts, but a ninja has to be used to pain, nay? Her mother felt a sense of pride welling up inside her at her daughter's bravery, all the while fuzzing around trying to mend the cut with bandages and sterilizing agents. Silly girl, a ninja also has to be careful, you know. The pink-haired child nodded. Yes, mother, I'll be careful. There's always something to be said for unwanted news. One of the things is unpleasant. Another is surprising. Put it together and you can say people get unpleasantly surprised by unwanted news. Shikamaru just had that look on his face that said he was unpleasantly surprised by the news Naruto gave him. So, the Kyuubi is going to transform you into a girl. Naruto gave a short nod. And it will happen within a week. Another nod. And it's irreversible. One more nod. You're a very troublesome person, Naruto. Nod again. So, what will you do about this then? How will you cope with it? I'd suggest you get yourself some girlfriends to hang out with. At our age it's no problem, but you'll have to learn to behave like a girl, else you'll be seen as even more of a freak than you already are. Naruto sighed and pouted. Man, this is troublesome, Shika. The Nara boy started laughing at this comment. You took the words right out of my mouth, Naruto. Naruto looked over at Shikamaru and frowned before laughing as well. Guess you're right. I've got a plan though. I'm gonna use henge to keep up my current appearance, so that people won't wonder why the demon brat suddenly vanished. Kyuubi-sensei told me she will teach me demonic jutsus once I could control her chakras, so. Oye, isn't that dangerous, Naruto? You shouldn't take risks that put our village in danger, you know. Shikamaru admonished Naruto, who pouted again. I know that, Shikamaru, and I won't endanger the village. After all, the fourth Hokage protected this village, and he's my hero despite sealing the Kyuubi in me. By the way, did you know that the fourth Hokage created many jutsu, not just the two legendary ones? Kyuubi told me she vaguely remembers him using some very dangerous jutsu on her when they fought. Isn't that cool? Shikamaru sighed and just smiled. As ninja, appearances should be deceiving, and Naruto's plan to keep up the demon brat appearance was a very good plan indeed. It gave him some interesting ideas for himself. Troublesome, but it might be worth it in the end. Naruto, if you learn some of those demon jutsus, I'd like to know about them, alright? I'll read some more about sealing and stuff, maybe I can help you too. Just be careful, alright? Don't let too many people in on your true identity, use it wisely, alright? I've got to go home or my mom might get troublesome. Thanks for trusting in me, Naruto. Shikamaru stood up with that and left, leaving Naruto alone in his apartment. It was pretty late, so Naruto decided to brush his teeth and go to bed. Yamanaka Flower Shop, 2nd floor, Yamanaka home. Ino, it's time for bed. The young blonde girl looked up from her books. It was picture books with tales of brave ninja fighting evil ninja, and the girl was quite captivated with them. AWH do I have to, mom? I'm reading about how Asuka and Shinosuke fought the evil samurai tyrant Yuru. Mom, will you read the story for me? Please? She smiles and chuckles softly. No, but your dad would love to, wouldn't you, Inoichi? Throwing her husband a sideways glare that no man would ever say no to, the proud leader of the Yamanaka household swallowed that pride and nodded to his dearest. Of course, I'd love to read that story for my dearest baby girl. Again, he mentally added. Every single night for the past 2 weeks he'd been reading ninja stories to his daughter at bedtime. He was happy that she took such great interest in the ninja world. His wife was a civilian, so the chances were she could go either way, becoming a ninja or living a peaceful civilian life. From the looks of it, she had chosen the path of a ninja. Alright then, baby girl, let's get you to bed, shall we? He heaved the young child up into his arms, picked up the book in his other and carried the cheering bundle of joy to her room. A few hours later. Inoichi, are you saying you think your daughter will become a kunoichi? The deceptively scary face of a mild-mannered Nara looked at his best friend. They were sitting across from each other, a shogi board between them, and to their side sat the third member of the infamous Ino Shikacho trio. Shuza Akamichi was a bountiful man, plenty to love and plenty to hug. Calling him something less inviting than big-boned would give you a royal pounding from any member of the Akamichi household, not just Shuza himself. The Akamichi clan happened to be very sensitive about their own weight. In fact, most of the size of an Akamichi is muscle, since their jutsu required body strength, not body mass. A slim Akamichi is a weak Akamichi, or so is the general belief. A girl, Inoichi? The large man smiled. Well, if you think she'll be a strong member of the next generation Ino Shikacho trio, then. He was interrupted by the blonde mindwalker. That's just it. I do not think it would be in the girl's best interest to be a member of a preset trio. We can introduce our children to one another and see how they pick up from there, but if she does not want to be friends with the boys, then who are we to say she must be? But the trio, Inoichi. What will happen to our clan's legendary combination? Shuza attempted to argue, but Shikaku smiled and moved one of his shogi pieces. Well, if that is what you think is best, then by all means I approve. The teamwork is a vital part to our clan's combination trios. If they cannot work together, then the team will suffer instead of prosper. And she would be the first female member of the Ino Shika Cho trio, and the female mind works in mysterious ways even I cannot predict. Shuza calmed down as his friend explained the status quo, and then nodded. In that case, I guess we should introduce them to one another soon. How about a barbecue at the Akamichi estates? Oh, I will invite another kid. Seems like Choji and Shikamaru found a good friend. And the kid is no slouch either, 7 years old and able to use the kawarimi already. Both the Nara and the Yamanaka clan heads looked at Shuza curiously at this, but the well-built man just smiled secretly. A few days later, the Hokage Tower. Hokage-sama, I am so sorry. I had no idea there were still anyone thinking in those tracks among my clan members. Had I known I would have dealt with it personally. You must understand. The rowdy-looking woman known as Sume Inuzuka was cut off rather briskly by the Hokage. Enough, Sume. She clapped her mouth shut instantly, and had she a tail she would have put it between her legs right now. I'm sick and tired of all the assaults, all the hate and all the myths surrounding Naruto. The child has never done anything to harm our village, and Minato wanted him to be seen as a hero. He's already begun changing the world around him by himself. He's made friends with the heirs of the Akamichi, Nara and Hyuga clans. He also defeated a spy from Kumogakure who attempted to kidnap poor Hinata. The Inuzuka clan head looked shocked both at the news of the kidnapping attempt and the fact that a 7-year-old boy managed to defeat a Chunin from Kumo. I want you to properly apologize to the boy, Sume. And then I would like it if you, like the other 3 clans, would learn to know him before deciding he is made of bad stuff. The boy is coming over soon, him and I have something to discuss. After that I will send him to the Inuzuka compound where you will learn to know him, alright? Sume Inuzuka had never felt animosity towards the young blonde demon container, but she had never particularly wanted to help him either. Generally the Inuzuka clan and the Kyuubi container had a relationship of, I stay away from you. You stay away from me, but some of her clan couldn't see the difference between a prison warden and its prisoner. She dealt rather harshly with several cases of overzealous mutts who had decided the boy was dangerous and a free target, but some always slipped the net. Nobody could be everywhere at once. Yes, Hokage-sama, I would be honored to do so. It fits rather nicely too. Both of my puppies are at home today so that gives me a chance to introduce them to Uzumaki. Maybe he'll make more friends. A few minutes later, after Sume had left and the ancient Hokage had cleared his mind of the ordeal, a timid blonde boy peeked in from the door. Hokage-sama, Hiruzen blinked and looked at the boy. Normally he wasn't this timid, was he? Silent and normally kept to himself, but never afraid of talking or showing himself. Naruto, please come in. Don't look like that. You'll make an old man scared. Please, sit down and tell me what it is you wanted to talk about. The old Hokage smiled at Naruto who nodded and walked inside the door, turned and closed it then pattered over to a chair in front of the desk. Naruto, you look like you're walking towards your doom. After Naruto had sat down, he looked down at his feet for a while. The silence was awkward and not a little unsettling for the Hokage. I'm not entirely sure how I should tell you this, Hokage-sama. It's a long story. Sarutobi smiled down at the boy. I'm sure that if you start from the beginning then everything will be told eventually. The young blonde nodded. Then please don't interrupt until I am finished. At the old man's confirmation of this, Naruto began his tale. You know just as much as I do how much the village resents me. Up until some months back however, I did not know why. But I'm not stupid, Hokage-sama. I learned what was wrong on my own. Being called the demon brat behind your back, having your birthday the same day the Kyuubi attacked and was defeated, not to mention my looks. One day I thought, maybe I am a demon? Maybe I am the Kyuubi and just don't know it yet? And that night I stood face to caged face with the Kyuubi. She's imprisoned within me, but I guess you already knew. Don't worry, I do not hate you. I was relieved to find out I wasn't the demon, but I felt sorry for her. She didn't exactly look comfortable. We talked a lot, since neither of us have anyone else to talk to. Eventually, she agreed to teach me how to be a ninja based on what she knows of human shinobi. Demons do not use ninjutsu like us humans, but because I am a Jinku. Jinshu. Air. The boy stopped and scratched his head laughing nervously. Ahahaha. Oh, whatever you call it, one of those who keep demons inside them at least. Because I am that, I have access to demon chakra, so I can use those skills eventually too. Anyway, that is what she said, and she would teach me that eventually. Of course this wasn't for free, we've traded. I grow mentally. That means I get smarter. I use that to change how the prison looks. A sewer isn't really a good place to have a prison. So I try to make decent looking places for her to stay and give her some comforts, and I get training as a result. So for the past 1 or 2 months, I don't know, I lost a bit track of time with all that happened. She taught me some basic stuff. Some taijutsu stances, chakra control, kawarimi and henge. But then we met that Kumogakure spy. Oh yeah, I didn't know the henge back then. Anyways, he tried to kill me and I was really scared then, but Kyuubi helped me, although it wasn't entirely for the good of me. She had intended to start giving me some of her demonic chakra after I reached something she calls puberty. I'm not exactly sure what that is yet, but she says it's the time when boys turn to men and girls turn to women. I haven't reached it yet, so she says. But she forced that chakra into me and that allowed me to win over the scary-looking man. He was scared of me then. Later she really needs to talk to me, she says. And she tells me that giving me so much demonic chakra before this puberty thing wasn't too bright an idea. This is why I came to you, Hokage-sama. I've got a secret now and I thought you should know about it. After all, you're the Hokage, right? Though I don't know if that makes much sense. I'm trying to see what stuff means or if it makes sense or if it is smart. I'm not too good at it yet, so I'll make mistakes, but I'm learning though. Hokage-sama. Naruto stood up and looked directly at him, looking scared and determined at the same time. The thing is, the Kyuubi's chakra is changing me. It is changing my body, but not my mind. She said she doesn't want to affect my mind, not much at least. And she can't either, the seal prevents her unless I weaken it, which I won't. But, the air around Naruto shimmered and seemed to melt and evaporate at the same time, blurring out the vision of Naruto and replacing it with a young girl of Naruto's age. The trademark scars on his cheeks visible on hers and her long blonde hair bound in twin pigtails that hung down framing her face. I'm turning into a girl, Hokage-sama. Naruto's voice was almost the same, maybe a slight pitch higher, more feminine. It would be impossible to tell until puberty. Hiruzen took it in stride though. The young girl stood there twiddling her thumbs and looking uncertain, her nerves starting to get the best of her. Each silent second made her more nervous and unsure. Then he broke into a smile. Naruto, you're the #1 most surprising ninja I have ever met. He started laughing heartily. True, he was concerned about the demon breaking free, but he was more concerned about Naruto's well-being and if she were unhappy, the demon had a greater chance of escaping. Keeping Naruto happy and letting her have a decent life was probably the best way of treating the Jinchuriki and demon stigma. So you're saying you're turning into a girl. And the Kyuubi is female. That's a fact I will file for another day. That jutsu you used, it's a demonic one, I guess? I didn't recognize it, nor did I sense it on you. Henge are usually easy to figure out, but that one you used sure looked realistic. Naruto was relieved, looking extremely happy that the Hokage accepted her so easily. Yes. It was the demonic jutsu henshin. It physically transforms the user, which means I become what I imagine, instead of making a copy image over myself instead. Hiruzen just nods at this. Well, Naruto, your secret is safe with me. But I think you need to choose sooner or later, a girl or a boy. As a girl you won't be followed and hated like the people do now, unless you reveal yourself as the boy, but a girl poses several difficult problems of its own. I don't even know since I'm not a girl myself. But you should be careful whichever you choose. But can't I be both at once, Hokage-sama? The old man blinked. I mean, if I am the boy from time to time, so people think I'm still around, then I can be my girl self to all my friends, can't I? Hiruzen looked deep in thought for a while. Sure, he could attempt that, but the problem it posed was what if someone looked for both at once? Nobody could be at 2 places at once. Naruto, I have an idea. Outside of Konoha in a small cave in a hill that should not have existed sat 2 people, though only one person sat. The other was lying down. It was quite small, but there was just enough room for the 2 of them to relax in the dark recesses of the hollowed-out hillside. while the surrounding area was lightly forested, concealing the entrance while still offering a semi-transparent view outwards through the underbrush. Misha and Shodan, the cave's two inhabitants, were relaxing before the day's adventures. Misha had taken a liking to the blonde Jinchuriki and had begun stalking the boy-turned-girl. But right now she was snoring loudly. Shodan was as usual unfazed by his sister's rather loud actions and was keeping watch. They were after all near a ninja village. He looked up and gave a glare towards a point in the air outside the cave that seemed to squirm and twist before giving way to a cloaked and orange swirl-masked individual, who upon arriving gave a surprised jolt at having a short blade resting against his throat and a tall shadow looming over him. Whoa! Instantly the masked person vanished and reappeared several meters behind the previous spot he was standing on, eyeing his opponent carefully and considering his next move. The mysterious foe, however, stood grounded on the spot, as if searching for something. Never would I have believed that had I not seen it with my own eyes. Someone who is faster than I can follow. I have not experienced that since the Yondaime Hokage. And who are you? The masked man was looking warily at the shadow-clothed Shodan. Even in the morning sun's rays through the canopy of the trees, his shadow clothes made him hard to spot if you did not know what to look for. What is that jutsu you're enveloped in? And how do you mask your chakra, because I do not believe anyone with such speed can have civilian-level chakra. Of course, Shodan didn't answer the man but instead calmly returned to the cave, confusing the masked intruder even more. As he made a move towards Shodan and the cave, he abruptly stopped as a dagger landed just in front of his foot, barely outside a thin line in the dirt. The impact was soundless, and yet the weapon sunk into the dirt like it had been propelled with a cannon, its sharpness obvious. Upon closer inspection, the intruder noticed the line went in a circle around the small hill, and he retraced his steps, noticing he had happened to first appear on the inside of the circle, and it then hit him why he was attacked like that. I get it. I won't get in your way, you won't get in my way. Very well, I can live with that. He then vanished within a field of warped air again, not a trace or clue showing he ever existed. Sitting down again at the entrance to the cave, Shodan went back to his still self, watching over and guarding his sister. That power doesn't belong to this world, brother. Why didn't you kill him? Came the question from the sleeping Misha. Listening to his unspoken reply, she nodded from her lying down position. Valid point. All right, I'm done resting. The purple-haired teen bounced straight up in an instant, the smoky clothing almost not catching up to her movements in time. Let's go hunt us some demon ninja. I think it's time to introduce ourselves to our new protege. Meanwhile, at the Hokage Tower, the Hokage sighed heavily. For over a year now he had been stalling the council, hoping that his spy Itachi would find some way to solve the coming conflict between the village and the Uchiha clan before it escalated. Itachi had said several times he was onto clues, and the fruits of his labor was lying at the desk in front of him now. A complete list of everyone involved in the upcoming revolt, down to the weakest, most insignificant supporter. The list comprised nearly half the Uchiha clan and several members of other clans. Sympathizers no doubt, but with this list the third Hokage could finally make a move. Each of the names on this list had been guaranteed by Uchiha Itachi and his cousin Shisui, who acted as a relay informant for the young Anbu captain. Thank you, Weasel. It pains me to give you tasks like these, but it is necessary in order for us to maintain peace. With this list, I will be able to contain the situation and leave the innocent alone. We will act tonight, so make sure to arrive at 10 precisely. Weasel just nodded, a slight drop down and up of his weasel-faced Anbu mask before vanishing in a blur. Hiruzen Sarutobi rose from his chair and sighed heavily as he turned to look out the window, musing at his misfortunes. Curses be, Minato Namikaze. This situation's only worsened since you left. The old man glanced over his back, a rather hefty stack of papers on the desk. He groaned in agony. Then again, it might be better dying than suffering this menial task day in and night out. At the Inuzuka compound, afternoon. Young Naruto was currently laughing and rolling on the floor while being licked. No, gobbled up in the face by an eager little fuzzball named Akamaru. Ha 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 ha, stop it, ehehe, that tickles. Naruto was squirming under the puppy until Kiba finally lifted the white menace up into his arms and grinning at the blonde. Sorry about that, he's very eager, you see, I just got him. But one day him and me, we're gonna be the best partners there is. Naruto managed to stand up and gave a smile back at the Inuzuka heir. Sounds like a pretty cool goal. That's right. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, pleased to meet you. Naruto held out a hand to the boy who returned the gesture, shaking the secret gender swapper's hand. I'm Inuzuka Kiba. My mom told me you would be coming over. Come on, let's go inside. Kiba put the dog on his head. Naruto looked at that action curiously for a second before following the boy inside. The Inuzuka compound was composed of several large mansions, 2 kennels for breeding ninja dogs and an animal hospital, specializing in treatment of dogs, of course. The mansions were actually large apartment buildings which housed most of the Inuzuka clan members and their companion dogs, barring those who lived outside the compound with friends, family, lovers. Only Sume Inuzuka and her clan heirs had their own housing, but it was very small compared to the mansions, apartment complexes. At the far end of the compound stood their 2-floor house plus basement, quite bland and insignificant in its design as it was meant for shelter, not comfort. The Inuzuka didn't really aim for comfort and laziness in their daily lives but rather efficiency and progress. The mansions too were designed for efficiency, although the outside gave the impression of power and wealth. Even the Inuzuka had to play the politics game, after all. Upon entering the house, Naruto looked around in awe, since this was way larger than anything she had ever seen in her life apart from the Hokage Tower. It's not much to look at, but it's home and that's what counts. Kiba spoke with pride and one could tell he was an Inuzuka through and through by the way he held himself as he said that. He gave it the look of a loyal member of the pack praising his comrades and their work. But I was slightly surprised though. I never thought boys grew their hair out to be that long. It makes you look kinda cute. Don't think I'm weird or anything, I'm just saying. Naruto could have slapped her own face now. How come she didn't think of using the jutsu she learned from Kyuubi? Now she was all exposed as a girl. Good thing Kiba hadn't noticed, but she doubted his family would be that imperceptive. Ah well, you see, I just never got around to cutting it, and well, I thought it looked kinda cool. I might cut it soon though, I do like short hair too. She said, attempting to excuse herself. Kiba seemed to buy it or ignore it. He was already rambling about jutsus and the ninja academy, which was a subject Naruto could easily fall into. As Naruto entered the living room, 3 new pairs of eyes immediately settled onto her. Naruto had a keen sense for being watched, when she was not busy thinking about too much random stuff, and she knew that she was being watched even though the Inuzuka prince was still keeping her quite engrossed in conversation. Until his mother made her presence known. Kiba, could you go feed the dogs? It's your turn and you should have done it before Naruto arrived. Sume Inuzuka practically barked at her son, who jumped to attention, quickly made an apology to Naruto and rushed out to finish his task. Upon hearing that a boy his age would show up today, Kiba had forgotten a bunch of things from the sheer excitement and wonder of who it could be, since he had not often met other children his age yet. Uzumaki Naruto, huh? The Inuzuka matriarch looked over the blonde, who seemed slightly intimidated by the inspection. I'm pretty sure Sandame said you were a boy though. So why aren't you? She gave the boy-turned-girl a feral grin and ruffled her hair. No need to explain, it's probably something I don't want to get involved with. Just tell the old man about it. Naruto gave a nod, deciding against telling her that the third already knew. Sume turned serious, looking down at the blonde child in front of her. Naruto Uzumaki. She took a deep breath. Despite being a clan leader, formal stuff still sucked for the Inuzukas, but she would see this through, if not for the third then for her own clan Sake. On behalf of my clan, I apologize for the behavior of one Inuzuka Raku, the one you attacked you a few days back. His actions were completely unjustified and he will be punished, both by clan and law for his actions. If there is anything if there is anything I can do for you, please let me know. Naruto felt and looked completely stunned by the apology. This was a clan leader, a very powerful person, and even Naruto knew that much. And here that woman was apologizing to her, Naruto the demon brat. She swallowed and searched for the words to reply to this situation. Thank you for the apology, Inuzuka-sama. Truth is that my attacker, Raku, he didn't do much since I was rescued by my friend, Shikamaru Nara, before I got seriously hurt. But thank you for the apology and your consideration, it really means a lot to me. I don't know what to say actually. Thanks, really. The whisker-marked girl bowed stiffly, having never done much formal stuff before or even been taught how to. Sume Inuzuka sighed in relief, stood up and slapped the girl on her back. Man, being all so stiff and courteous. It really doesn't fit me. Please just call me Sume, and feel free to come here anytime you wish. You'll always be welcome at our home. Naruto nearly keeled over from the slap but managed to keep her balance and gave the trademark Naruto grin. Thanks, Sume-chan. And you should call me Naruto. Being called by my last name isn't something I care for. I never really liked being stiffly polite either. Gives me the creeps for some reason. Hana Inuzuka, the second presence in the room, shook her head but smiled at her mother's antics while Sume's companion Kuromaru didn't bother much and kept dozing off in a corner of the room. Well, I've got to go make dinner. By the way, you're staying for dinner, Naruto-chan. Naruto just nodded, all too happy with the offer. I'd love to. So, Naruto is it? Come here, I won't bite. Hana was waving the other girl over to the couch she sat in, and Naruto took a seat beside the young woman. Tell me, Naruto, do you have any favorite clothes? The brunette had a conspiratorial smile and twinkle in her eyes as she looked at the young blonde who shook her head. The rest of the day was spent with Hana teaching Naruto everything that is the glory of clothes, shopping and anything else a girl should pay attention to. Naruto absorbed it all like a sponge absorbs water. Nay, are we gonna meet her today, brother? Misha asked her brother, her attention glued to something in front of them both, in the back of the cave. The something was tiny realistic models of Naruto, Sume, Hana and Kiba, as well as parts of the inner layout of the Inuzuka home. Shodan's eyes were glowing with white energy, pouring forth from his eyes into the image, making them move. It was in fact a real-time reflection of the events happening in the Inuzuka home. So all we have to do is wait for her to go home to herself, then. Outside Naruto's apartment later in the evening, Naruto had a happy, satisfied smile as she unlocked the door to her own home. Thinking about it, the Inuzukas sure were truly special. Sume and Hana had insisted Naruto stay there for several hours while they went shopping for him, and with only Kiba as company, Naruto quickly got to know the energetic boy. He seemed to be gunning for leadership of the clan and insisted he would one day beat his sister to the punch by being the best Inuzuka there ever was. Naruto had to smile at this as it reminded her of her own interest in becoming Hokage, though she was not quite as vocal about it. She did tell the boy that if he ever wanted to become clan head, he should talk less and work more for it. Everything Hana had taught here was swirling through her head too. With the Kyuubi in her, Naruto had two minds at work trying to memorize and learn it all, and the Kyuubi was quite eager to assist for some reason. Truth was, the Kyuubi didn't know anything about current-day fashion and did not want her pet project to be ridiculed, so she was dead set on making Naruto the most popular kunoichi in the world. Naruto stopped and looked around the room, placing the bag with her new clothes and accessories on the couch before freezing. Something was off, the atmosphere in her room just rubbed her the wrong way. The door slammed behind her and she quickly turned, seeing a gigantic, dark shadow looming in front of the door and turning the lock. Who are you? Naruto was walking backwards slowly, her fear of being assaulted having surfaced again, making her look around desperately for other escape routes. Geez, such a scaredy cat you are. The girly, slightly whiny voice behind her caused Naruto to jump into the roof and stick there with claws of chakra subconsciously while she shrieked. Eek! Looking down to see what scared her, so she saw another shadowy figure, though the shadows were receding and revealing a girl with purple hair in a long braid down her back. The other shadow was still as dark and mysterious, and made Naruto very unsettled. What are you? The girl grinned up at Naruto. Why, I'm your new teacher, of course, she exclaimed with excitement, a tendril of the shadows around her wrapping around her arm and shooting towards Naruto when she pointed her hand up at the frightened girl, grabbing her around the waist. The blonde couldn't hold her grip on the roof as the smoky dark tendrils gently tugged her down and placed her on the couch, next to her bags. We scared ya good there, sorry about that. Misha sighed and looked over at the tall shadow in annoyance. Yes, brother, I was going to. She turned her attention back to a confused Naruto. Sorry about that too. My brother keeps picking on me because I told him we should come here and he didn't agree. He's a good guy, but since you can't really see it on him, and since he's so big and scary, some people think he's a bad guy. Ah, my name is Misha, and this is Shodan. Naruto had managed to calm herself slightly and looked from one to the other. At least her chakra claws and foxified features were receding. Though the absence of the fox was scaring her slightly, it felt as if the fox was hiding from something. What do you want from me? The shadow-clad girl grinned and made a pose. We want you to be the coolest ninja ever. She suddenly face-planted out of nowhere. Ouch, what did ya do that for, huh? Glaring daggers at her brother, she eventually relented after listening to something. Naruto was confused again, these two were weird. Fine. She caught Naru's attention again. My brother says he refuses to take part in this, so I guess what I should say is that I want you to be the coolest ninja ever. She put emphasis on the I parts this time, as if making a point. There, was that better, brother? She glared at him again and he seemed to pull a bit back into his own shadows. First of all, I'm gonna get you a pet, she said and grinned, then she thrust her palm into Naruto's stomach, causing the whiskered blonde to gape in fear, just waiting for the pain to overwhelm her senses. When that never happened, Naruto hazarded to take a peek, seeing the purple-haired teen girl's palm thrust into her belly straight through her clothes which appeared unharmed by the action. Then she felt movement inside her body and shuddered. Kami, that feels disturbing, she muttered and closed her eyes, hoping it would all be done soon. The seal on her stomach was glowing like a Christmas tree, its shape and functions turning, twisting, being reformed into something else. A few seconds of eternity later, Naruto finally felt the hand leave her. The whole experience through and through was an ethereal feeling that slightly creeped her out. And here ya go. Naruto opened her eyes one by one and was met by a massive wall of fur. She sneezed as something poked her nose, shook her face and attempted to tame the hairy forest, managing to keep it below her chin at least. And what is th? Naruto stopped mid-sentence. She blinked. Then she blinked again. Just to be certain, she rubbed her eyes and blinked once more. Her hand shot to her stomach and she led some chakra through her body. The seal gloved still, but looked different. It was now a hole in the middle and two threads spiraling out from it, and even though they stopped after a few rounds around the hole, Naruto could feel them, like threads from her body. One was leading into herself and the other lead outwards, and she knew whatever it lead to was the owner of the forest of fur in front of her. She's still bound to you, although she's now more free to teach you what you need to know. Naruto looked at the smiling girl, slightly mortified. What'll I do now? People will really start thinking of me as a demon now. They'll think I'm a demon and come for me, they'll kill me. Of course not. We have only been here a week, but me and my brother have already thought of a way to fix that. Kyuubi-chan, why not join the discussion? The fox sighed and shifted from the shape of a large fox about the size of Kuromaru, morphing into a humanoid form, her fur taking the shape of an orange and red silky robe, her tails pulling into her spine and the bushy hair from the many tails streaming up the spine and filling out the hair on her head, red with white tips in the ends. I wished to avoid that, Kami-sama. But your kin always seems to enjoy causing misery for my own. The purple-haired girl giggled and clapped her hands. Correct, but I won't do much though. Me and my brother aren't exactly welcomed by the other gods anymore. You know, all that jealousy and intrigue and politics. Anyways, we're half demons now or something, and I don't really care since there is no place to go for us. The girl shrugged and turned her focus to Naruto again. Naruto, I wish to teach you lots of things I've learned from ninjas in other places. Me and my brother have to leave very soon. Well, we have about 3 years we can stay here and hide. Then we have to leave, so in the next 3 years, I'll train you to defend yourself in Kyuubi here. After all, this is a demon world, and it wouldn't do to have the strongest demon die or be abused. Do you have complaints with my decision, Kyuubi? The red-haired woman had been squirming and trying to raise her hand several times while Misha was talking, and yipped when the girl addressed her. It's just, what about me? I was kind of teaching the girl myself. Kyuubi poked her fingers together and pouted slightly at having her charge and pet project taken away from her. Daw, how cute you are. Misha smiled and ruffled the demon queen's hair. Naruto almost swallowed her tongue as she gasped, fearing Kyuubi's volatile response. Kyuubi was after all a demon. The last thing the whiskered girl expected was for the queen of demons to blush at the sign of affection. Don't worry, Kyuubi-chan, we'll teach her together, but I'm unfortunately only allowed to use this world's build matrix in my teaching methods. It's a rule, you see. The red-haired queen snorted. You have rules, now? Last I recalled, gods only cared about rules that benefited themselves, and even then the rules were fickle at best. Not so unlike us demons, in fact. She frowned and looked at the female god being. Since when did a god care about saving a world after its creation? Especially a demon world? Misha just shook her head. Another time. We need to get this girl into shape. We should also try to collect all your energy before it grows out of proportion. Brother, would you please? She looked at the forgotten shadow by the door, and he gave a slight nod of his head before disappearing without a trace. Naruto let out her breath, unaware that she had even held it. She immediately held it again when the two females turned their full attention to her. They had malicious grins on their faces. Naruto, before this night is over, you'll have learnt the most important jutsu you will ever come to know. The old Hokage already gave it to you, did he not? Kyuubi gave Naruto a smile that the blonde kunoichi to be knew held lots of bad promises about what would happen in the near future. A while later, the Haruno house. Knock knock knock. 3 quick raps on the door. The parents of Haruno Sakura were sitting in the living room wondering about the expenses of their daughter going to the ninja academy when someone knocked at their door. It was very late in the afternoon, so Haruno Keiji went to the door and looked through the peephole. There stood a tall man wearing the garments of a Chunin ninja. The whole get-up with cargo pants, Chunin vest and the forehead protector. Opening the door, Keiji Haruno looked at the Chunin. Yes, may I help you? The Chunin smiled disarmingly at the suspicious man. It has come to my attention that your daughter wishes to attend the academy. I am merely here to talk to you about the expenses and what it entails for her to be signed up. The Chunin stated. Keiji frowned slightly. At this hour? Why didn't you come earlier? Besides, I have never heard of something like this. The Chunin gave Keiji a look of disappointment. Haruno Keiji, how many civilian families do you know that have sent their daughters or sons to the ninja academy? After a short while of thinking, Keiji finally opened the door, defeated. Alright, come on in. Tsubaki, could you put the kettle on? He called back to his wife who stood at the end of the hallway watching the men. She went to the kitchen to put on the stove. Thank you. I imagine it must be very disconcerting having a stranger show up in the middle of the night with no notice. I'll make this quick. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Sitting on the rooftop across from the Haruno household, Shoden gave a dark smile to the sleeping village as he watched the proceedings beneath him, his lips moving in sync with the Chunin, as he convinced the couple that their daughter would be best taken care of with a family of ninja. Back at Naruto's apartment, the Jinchuriki was sitting cross-legged on the floor listening to her two senseis going on and on about chakra, theories and practical solutions. The stuff was fascinating, but a lot of things were piling up as questions. Naruto, as you should recall from the books I told you to read, chakra is incredibly difficult to crystallize and thus, study. Because of this, nobody truly knows exactly what chakra is except the one who created it. It's a life force, it keeps living things alive, acting as a symbiotic energy to a body's own lifeblood. What the chakra gets out of it, nobody here knows. The Jubi probably knew, after all he was the one who created this place. Let's continue. Kyuubi was walking slowly back and forth, having procured glasses from somewhere that sat on her nose, two of her tails wagging back and forth behind her in a lazy manner. Misha gave a big grin and took over for Kyuubi, sitting perched hovering just above the table in front of Naruto. When a person channels chakra, they pull this life force into their hands to form spells, or jutsu as you call them. Any kind of jutsu can be performed this way by using the life force, but everyone is unique. Individual. As you will come to know, performing some jutsu will be a lot easier than performing others. For example, a person who has an affinity for Doten Jutsu, or earth spells as I would call them, will find it very hard to learn Raiden Jutsu, also known as lightning spells. It's how humans here are built. Kyuubi nodded at this as if to underline the half-god's point if there was one, her ears wobbling with emotion before following up. But no matter how tricky or strange a jutsu seems, you can always learn it. With enough training, practice and repetition you'll eventually unlock the key to the jutsu. For any elemental jutsu, learning one means you're one step closer to learning another one. Even cross-element. Even a Doten user can eventually use the most powerful Raiden spells if he practices enough. Of course there's the problem with the sixth element. The body element. If you have seen the Akamichi or the Nara perform jutsu, you'll know what I'm talking about. There are those who focuses on not elemental jutsu, but rather jutsu that affect theirs or other bodies. These people utilize the body element, or rather the chakra's habit of affecting the body itself. The most common group here are the genjutsu users. They create illusions by affecting the chakra inside other people, but this requires very precise chakra control. Misha grinned hugely at Naruto as she continued the lesson. There's always a line between chakra control and chakra capacity. But with enough training, anything is possible. You have massive chakra capacity, so training control should and will be your highest priority. But before that you need to learn the clone technique that old geezer gave you. And while we're on the clone subject, you'll need to learn the true clone jutsu if you ever want to keep your disguise intact. Naruto looked at her two teachers curiously. Why is that? And what is that? Kyuubi looked just as curious as Naruto at this. Yeah, what is the true clone jutsu, Kami-sama? I never heard of something like that. Misha gave another wide grin. It's just what it says. A true clone of yourself. Capable of independent thought like the Cage Bunshin, but won't go down in one hit and will even realistically die upon defeat. A second you. Although you should never make more than 2 true clones at once, and only with long breaks in between and plenty of sustenance to gain what you lost. The cost of the clone is very high, you see. Right now you're too scrawny and feeble to create one without dying, but not to worry. The energy matrix here allows me to use my powers in rather unusual ways. Misha looked thoughtful for a moment, before floating towards the frightened blonde who tried to avoid the purple-haired divinity with little to no actual attempt, already been proven that she could not and would not escape anyway. As Misha touched the aspiring Hokage's forehead, all thought disappeared for Naruto and she collapsed on the couch. Just rest, dear, else this would probably have hurt like hell. She giggled and corrected herself. But it probably will hurt just as much when you wake up anyway. She grinned while her hands started to glow an ethereal green color. Outside the Haruno home, 21:58 in the evening. Shoden was still on the rooftop, currently just sitting with his head resting against the solid brick walls, elevated some 20 centimeters above the roof to provide a sort of fence around it like most buildings in Konoha. Be it actual fences, wood or brick elevations, the rooftops of Konoha were more child-safe than most other places in the Fire Country. His eyes catched movement bouncing across the rooftops, and he blurred out of vision as the ninja flew past him. Following a hunch, the stoic giant decided to follow these people. The sun had already set, twilight was covering the village in its darker-than-dark pitch. With the orange and deep blue sky above, and the lights from the city below, spotting anyone moving across rooftops would be incredibly difficult, especially if that someone was as darkly veiled as the twilight itself. The Uchiha District, 2201. Do you understand my orders? A battle-garb-clad Hiruzen Sarutobi looked to the 15 Anbu in front of him. Everyone was wearing dark ninja garments that made their movements difficult to see, and black versions of their Anbu masks. All 15 nodded in unison. Weasel, dog and cat, each of you led a team to your designated locations. The operation begins in 4 minutes. Bear, wolf and horse, you're with me. Shoden was standing right next to the Anbu and Hiruzen, believing his demon wrappings made him invisible in the darkness. He was curious as to why the Anbu were making a move here. He knew an assassination team when he saw one, and here was 8 of them. Something big was going on. He decided he would tell his sister of this and made a move to leave when a hand suddenly grabbed his shoulder. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage, looked straight at Shoden. And who might you be? You're wearing a very rare object. How did you come across such a tool? The 3 Anbu with Hiruzen had already taken up position around Shoden, something he would have noticed had he not been too deep in thought, confident in his cloak. He lifted one arm slowly towards his throat and tore away the shadows there, revealing a severely mutilated and scarred throat to the 4 present. You cannot talk. Then how do you communicate? The old man questioned. The Chunin from before arrived at the scene at that moment, moving towards the 5 people. I communicate in many different ways. Shoden's lips were moving in sync with the Chunin's, and Bear's gruff voice spoke up from under his mask. Your clone, I presume? Shoden nodded and continued. My name is Bale Shoden Aldemar, I'm one of the Kami, on a self-imposed exile to your work along with my sister for petty reasons. I do not often communicate with others, preferring to let my sister speak, but I feel I should let you know that there's a dangerous individual within the walls you're about to besiege. I can defeat him, you cannot. I gazed upon his mind earlier this day. He knows about your plans and is here to make them fail. Or succeed better than you are plotting. I am not sure. At the mention of being a kami, Hiruzen had released his grip on Shodan. The old man had seen a lot of things in his life, and the knowledge of the demon wrappings being a tool of the gods and demons, along with a sense of truth radiating from the large man, compelled him to believe. He knew, of course, this was the nature of the kami. Their very presence made people believe in them. He had only met one in the past, but it was more than enough. You honor us with your presence, Kami-sama. Who is this individual you are talking about that you will fight for us? Hiruzen asked, genuinely curious and a bit frightened that a demon other than the nine could exist in the world. His name is Madara. His power is stolen from the demon that built this world. It makes him virtually untouchable. I will drive him away, but it is not my destiny to defeat this man. That destiny lies within your own demon child. He whispered that last part only to Hiruzen's ears. Care for her well, Sarutobi-san. She is one of our prodigies and we will need her in the far future. Do not let harm come to her, mostly not emotionally, until she is ready to fight on her own. Shodan disappeared with those words and his Chunin vanished in a puff of smoke. Hiruzen turned to focus on his own task at hand. Alright Enbu, let's end this rebellion. Konoha Forest, a few minutes later. Now then, I guess it's time to finish off my clan. Madara stood decisively, the Sharingan under his mask swirling ferociously, though he stopped as a familiar presence appeared behind him. The Shadow Warrior. I agreed to your terms and did not intrude on your sanctum. To what do I owe this meeting? Shodan appeared in front of Madara in a burst of darkness, looking directly into the Sharingan eyes. Thoughts of Shodan's poured through his own brightly blue-white glowing eyes, making the Sharingan wielder kneel. You are not allowed to bring harm your former clan unless they attack you. By my will as a kami you are no longer allowed to step beyond the borders of the country of fire. My will is absolute, you will comply to these decisions. The booming voice rang inside Madara's head, muting any thoughts he would have had. Why your will is absolute. The masked Uchiha said through gritted teeth, anger and agony rising. The commanding presence vanished and Madara could think again. A kami. You have defeated me twice, Shadow Warrior. I hope for my own sake we will never meet again. The ancient Uchiha disappeared through his space-time ability, already plotting ways to overcome the kami's law. Konoha, the next day. Did you hear? A woman whispered to her friend. Uchiha Itachi killed of nearly half his own clan and disappeared last night. All around Konoha, Enbu had placed rumors about Itachi attacking his own clan. Even the Uchiha believed the rumors, and later that day the Hokage officially announced Itachi a traitor to Konoha, a nuke nin. What wasn't said was that Itachi, Danzo, the counselors and Hiruzen had all come to an agreement on who were to blame. It was Itachi's suggestion that he take blame for it. By becoming a nuke nin, he could act as a spy for Konoha. With everyone in agreement, Itachi left with only 2 notes revealing some things to his brother and cousin. Shisui Uchiha moved in with Makoto and Sasuke after the incident, and Sasuke warmed up to him rather quickly. The note he got from his best friend told him to take care of Sasuke and, once Shisui decided Sasuke worthy, reveal Itachi's dream to the boy. Sasuke's note had 2 types of text. The first one told Sasuke that Itachi loved him and asked for his forgiveness for the actions he had taken against their family. It also said that the second part could only be revealed by the Sharingan, and told the full truth of why he had done it. The second part did in fact tell the truth, but only part of it, that the Uchiha had been plotting a coup d'état against the Hokage and that he had killed the ones who were planning to overthrow Konoha. It also revealed that members of other clans had been planning alongside the Uchiha, and they had also been silenced. The same part of the text told Sasuke to go to the Hokage immediately after he had read it to get a full explanation, and Hiruzen too knew about it. Sasuke was initially angry with his brother for what he had done and would have thrown away the note, without ever reading the second part had it not been for Naruto. Naruto woke up a couple of days after Misha knocked her unconscious, rolling around lazily in her bed until she felt a warm presence, which she snuggled up against in her sleepy morning state. 5 more minutes. The wheels in her mind started turning. Warm presence. Muscular. Her fingers started wandering. Shoulders, neck, chin, face, scars, weight, 3 on one side. Her eyes flew open and she sat straight up, turning her head to look at the boy sleeping next to her. The next words she uttered could be heard across half of Konoha as she yelled in the loudest voice that came to her. "What the hell is going on here?" That promptly woke up the spiky-haired blonde boy with intensely blue eyes. He blinked once, twice and then looked at the girl. What the hell happened to me? Why are you? Why am I? They looked at one another confused, before a light bulb blinked in their heads. True clone jutsu, they exclaimed in unison. The fox at the end of their bed yipped in approval of their deduction, unnoticed until now by both. Kyuubi, they both said, smiling at their pet, before they crawled over the bed to reach her. Kyuubi was in heaven as the two children started petting her, her 3 tails wagging happily. "Come on, hurry up sis." The spike-haired boy was practically bouncing back and forth in the hallway outside the currently quite overpopulated Uzumaki apartment. Naruto the boy was clad in an orange and blue hoodie, blue cargo pants and black fingerless gloves. A backpack hunched over his shoulders and an eager grin plastered on his face. It was the first day of school, and both Naruto twins were looking forward to it. Yes, don't stress me out little brother. I'm ready now, so keep your pants on," the elder twin said. Naruto the girl appeared from around the corner and gave a dazzling smile to her brother, giggling at his stunned expression. Having 2 perverted women as teachers and surrogate mothers did not bode well for Naruto's decency, as reflected in how she dressed, basing her looks on Misha's shadow smoke outfit. A tight tank top over her budding femininity, a miniskirt only slightly longer than her sensei's counterpart, matching gloves as her boy clone and also a few accessories. A belt just hanging slightly drooped on her hips and a kunai-shaped hairclip holding most of her hair back in a ponytail leaving her stomach bare and revealing most of her legs. Yep, she would definitely turn heads. A few months had passed since the appearance of Misha and Shoden and their intrusion on Naruto's life and now school was starting. Naruto had received very intense training to get up to speed with what most of the children at school should already know, like etiquette, morals, manners and behavior. At the same time, Naruto had been advised strictly not to cause trouble because of the stigma surrounding the Kyuubi. They surmised it would be best if Naruto flew under the radar, as they called it. The Uzumaki twins had, over the course of the past months as their intellect flourished, and with the help of one Shikamaru Nara, come up with a couple of plans or ideas for how they could win the village over. They had decided on keeping the plans a secret for now, although their first one began with school. Hyuga compound, about the same time. "Hinata, are you ready to go?" The voice of Hyuga Neji rang through the hall where the rooms of Hinata and Hanabi Hyuga were located. Neji was waiting for the heir of the Hyuga clan to finish preparations for the first day of school, although in his opinion she was taking a good deal longer time than she needed to. He was quite sure it had to do with one Naruto Uzumaki, and although he didn't mind the idea of those two together, it still irked him that someone other than him was in any way near his cousin. He figured he was probably just a tad bit overprotective of her, which was his mission as stated by both his uncle and his father. "Sorry I made you wait, Neji." The indigo-haired girl smiled and looked at Neji. Did I make you wait too long?" The shy heiress, although her lessons in confidence and self-reliance from Hisashi was helping, she had not lost her stuttering completely or recovered from the loss of her mother. Her family was a broken one, more so by those stupid Hyuga laws she wanted to see gone, but yet she still saw it as a good thing. Life experience makes a person grow, and Hinata wanted to grow into a strong, capable woman like her mother who would lead her clan into the future. But that was the future. First and foremost she would have to become a ninja. She would become strong, and she owed it all to Naruto. To her, Naruto was the epitome of courage and strength, and she would do her best to become as heroic as him. Most of her clan did not like those thoughts though. She shrugged off that fact as she walked to the academy alongside Neji. All in due time. Classroom 1C, homeroom teacher, Iruka Amino. Number of students, 31. Iruka was currently counting heads, seeing who was present for the first day of school. He only had 4 students left, looked like they were all present. He dotted down another P, for present, on his notebook and continued. "Sasuke Uchiha." "Here," came the monotone reply. "Tomoki Uchiha." Here, sensei, an overly eager girl's voice replied. He cringed, he could smell trouble from this one. Uzumaki Naruto-chan, present, came a neutral reply. He looked and saw the blonde girl picking dirt from under her fingernails, apparently uninterested. Uzumaki Naruto-kun, I'm here, believe it, came the boisterous reply from the blonde boy next to the girl. He didn't know the Kyuubi brat had a sister, but apparently so it was. He shrugged it off as irrelevant and noted down they were all present and accounted for. Now if only Naruto and Tomoki didn't become friends, he could have some control on this class. If only he knew. Alright class, welcome to the Ninja Academy. Here you will learn all the basics you need to begin your career as ninjas. Our Hokage, in his wisdom, has recently reformed the academy system. You will be the second generation to try out the new, improved structure of learning. 1 out of 4 weeks a month, you will be placed on a temporary team consisting of 2 other academy students, and you will be watched over by a Chunin or available Junin sensei while performing D-rank missions to apply the basic skills you have learned so far. The class started whispering among itself. Most of the students seemed very excited by these news. Do not be too excited now class, D-rank missions are little more than chores. After 6 months, you will be eligible for high D-rank missions outside the village itself, but that only means more travel. It will help build up stamina and endurance though, and doing D ranks is mostly to get to know the other possible team candidates. We will evaluate through mission reports given by your Chunin or Junin sensei and, in combination with the scores from the tests throughout the semester, decide who you fit in with, thus which teams will be formed. The Uzumaki boy and the Inuzuka were both holding up their hands. When Iruka noticed them and nodded to Inuzuka, they both blurted out a near-identical question. What about the payment from the D ranks, Iruka-sensei? Will we get paid for these missions? He had to grin at them. He knew from personal experience that the Inuzuka were a clan mostly in name and status. Money wasn't an issue, but they weren't exactly waiting in luxury either. And the Uzumaki twins were orphans like himself, so the question was not unexpected. You will of course be given full payment for the D ranks. However, since you are still not legal age, or rather since you're not genin yet, the money will be given to your parents or supervisors. Uzumaki twins, I would like to see the 2 of you after class regarding that, if you do not mind. The girl looked up from the book she had picked out of her bags. So she did study, that's a good thing at least. He was kind of worried that she was a completely aloof airhead, but his concerns seemed unwarranted. Of course we don't mind that, sensei. Iruka nodded and smiled. The boy seemed to follow the girl's decisions as he now sat still and waited patiently. He noticed the Uchiha girl did the same, looking up to the raven-haired so-called Uchiha prodigy, Sasuke, in adoration. He also noticed several girls looking at the dark-haired boy with heart-shaped eyes. This could be a problem, but he had no rights to interfere in personal affairs and only give advice if it affected studies. It would require some looking into. Well then, classes are divided like this. On Mondays you will have history lessons with me as well as local language and dialects. Unlike a normal school, these subjects are vital to a ninja. You need to master the culture and history lessons in order to successfully mingle with native populations in various areas you might end up traveling to as shinobi. And the language and dialects class is just as vital if you wish to successfully infiltrate other countries. On Tuesdays there's math and academic jutsu training. Knowledge of mathematics is important in and of itself. You see math in everything around you. It also helps when you try to learn the theories behind jutsu, so if you wish to design your own jutsu, it's very important that you know mathematics properly, or else your experiments could go horribly wrong. The 4th Hokage is famous for creating his own jutsu, and he graduated as top of his class in mathematics. This, Iruka noticed, caught the Kyuubi brat's attention, though his sister seemed indifferent. Iruka kept droning on about the classes. During Whedon's days it was mostly practical training such as Academy Basic Taijutsu. Although you were allowed to practice your own taijutsu, you still needed to learn the Academy basics, and during sparring, only the Academy form was allowed. Still, most of the Academy basics were common moves used in many taijutsu forms around Konoha. Even complete opposites such as the hard and gentle fist styles used moves from the Academy style, or rather, the Academy style used moves from them. Thursday was also practical training. kunai and shuriken practice, although students were free to choose if they wanted to practice that or the jutsu from theory class both days. On Fridays they had summary class, where they repeated what they had learned the past 4 days, as well as gender-specific classes, kunoichi training for girls and comparable classes for the boys, much to everyone's embarrassment, followed by a written test after lunch, and then they were done. The academy lasted from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day except Fridays, where they could leave whenever they finished the test. A couple of weeks later, both Uzumakis, Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata and Neji Hyuga, as well as Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi, were sitting on the roof of the academy eating lunch. They had all sort of gravitated towards one another when school started. Most prominently, you rarely saw Hinata or Kiba without one of the Uzumakis accompanying them, which was the cause for an explosion of rumors around school. Kiba was downing the food in a competition with Naruto and Choji, while the two girls were chatting and eating normally. Shikamaru was lying off to the side watching clouds, and Neji was meditating next to him. The blonde was getting annoyed at her clone brother and the three boys' boisterous claims that, "I can eat more than you ever can," and, "In your dreams, furball. You'll never beat an Akamichi. Can't you three eat with more style?" Naruto-chan exclaimed in annoyance and bonked her brother over the top of his head, causing him to attempt eating food with his entire face, unsuccessfully. Kiba roared with laughter as a pouty brother looked at the pony-tailed goddess of Class 1C, as she had been nicknamed, omelette and rice, covering half his face as he attempted a cute puppy eye look. It made him look like he had just been caught eating someone's favorite dish without their consent, and he was trying to get away with it. Kiba couldn't sit anymore, managing barely to put his food down on the ground before rolling away from it, clutching his stomach and laughing so the tears sprouted. Choji looked mortified and mumbled something about spoiled food. Akamaru, get offa me." The two girls were trying not to laugh at the pathetic sight, but when the white furball decided to cannonball launch itself on poor Naruto, the dam burst for them too. And the echoes of laughter could be heard across half the schoolyard, causing a few heads to turn towards the roof, although quickly dismissed as the schoolkids returned to their own lunches and discussions. The victim of all this was trying to get the hungry puppy out of his face before he didn't have one anymore, although the lapping tongue was a just as good reason to attempt removal of the temporary facial feature. That tongue was wet and drooly and really disgusting, not to mention the dog's breath. Gah! He managed to unhook the puppy and threw him away as he clambered onto 2 legs, gasping a bit more than he really should have, putting on a show for his friends. "I thought I was a goner for sure. Kiba, it's all your fault, you know. And I still would have won the competition." The other boy just nodded, trying to contain his giggling and gasping for air as he clambered to his feet and got back to his food, sitting down and leaning against the fence again. Sure, whatever you say, dog food." Choji was still mortified. All that food. Why? He was ignored, however, probably because he was mumbling to himself and still managing to eat his own food in a slow manner while looking at nothing in particular. Hinata was smiling at Naruto's antics. Being with all her friends really made her happy, and confident that she could complete anything she set in front of her. Especially Naruto-kun made her feel like that. She knew firsthand how brave he really was, and even his sister agreed to that. "Hinata-chan, you would have saved me, right?" The boy pouted and looked in her direction, causing the young girl's heart to skip a beat. He was so cute. "Oh, of course, Naruto-kun." She stammered out in reply, her stuttering returning full force. Hisashi would have sighed in resignation if he saw her now, and she mentally cursed herself for losing her calm. "Thanks, Hinata-chan. I knew I could count on you, unlike Fuzzbutt here." "Hey, I object to that statement. I don't have a fuzzy butt. Akamaru does." At the last comment, the hairball jumped at Kiba in protest, barking at him, causing Kiba to grin. "It was a joke, little buddy, you know that." He ruffled the puppy's head and the dog smiled at his owner, lying down in his lap. "AWH man, my food is ruined too. Oh well, school's soon starting again anyways. Sis, are going for ramen today, or are we going for ramen today?" he asked, just to reconfirm that he and his sister were going to devour some of the divine food after school. "Are you stupid, little brother? Of course not. We're going for Ikaraku's ramen after school, you know that. Ikaraku ramen is much more than just ramen, everyone knows that." She frowned at her clone brother before grinning and punching his shoulder. "It appears school is starting again. Neji was standing up as he predicted this, and soon after the bell rang calling the aspiring ninja to be back into the afternoon session. I have got to learn how he does that. Kiba whispered to Hinata as they trekked back to the classroom, and the Hyuga only smiled. Clan Secret. Intermission. Explanation of Naruto's Kage Bunshin and Enmei longevity, Bunshin. Naruto's Enmei Bunshin is quite accurately described as just that, a clone. The one performing this jutsu cannot be the same as the target of the jutsu, and it requires very delicate and finely tuned chakra control since it builds a living being from the bottom up. Had it been classified, it would most likely end up a medical kinjutsu, forbidden jutsu, since it has lots of medicinal uses, although none of them would be morally sound. Orochimaru is known to use a variation of this jutsu. While not perfected, it is more than useful enough. His version is also applied to himself, which makes it even less accurate and can cause deadly side effects. The perfected Enmei Bunshin is a more accurate copy than any twins can ever be. The chakra is identical, fingerprints more than 99% identical, and gender, usually identical. Due to Naruto's mishap with the Kyuubi, any Enmei Bunshin will become male, as Naruto's genetic makeup is still signing her as male despite the obvious physical and mental changes. This also allows for chakra transfer between the Enmei Bunshin and the original, which in turn allows the Kyuubi to gift either Naruto with her own chakra, if the two Narutos are in close proximity of course. When Kyuubi brings out her chakra, Kage Bunshins will get destroyed because Kyuubi's chakra is not Naruto's chakra and thus acts much like a genjutsu release where one person sends his chakra into another person to disrupt the flow and break a genjutsu. This is just the same on a grander scale that breaks ninjutsu already in progress. If Kyuubi would have brought out her chakra while Naruto were performing some other jutsu, like Rasengan, it would have been disrupted and most likely exploded in Naruto's face. Although memories and pain are not shared between the Enmei and the original, Kage Bunshin that is dispersed will grant all its memories to both Naruto and her Enmei, regardless of which of the two made it. This allows them to communicate without words through the use of clones and plan strategies soundlessly. Two brains do think better than one in this case. End of intermission. That same day at Ikaraku's ramen stand. Ah! The Uzumaki twins sighed in unison as they both put down their fifth bowl of ramen on the counter, before rubbing their bloated bellies. Now that is money well spent, sis. Naruto said, grinning, and his sister only nodded in reply, too stuffed to bother answering. Ikaraku smiled at the two as he picked up their bowls. You two seem to be doing good these days. How are things going at the academy? The two blondes looked at each other and grinned at the question, replying in unison. Everything's going just as planned, Ikaraku-san. To which the old man nodded and smiled. Good, school is important for anyone. Make sure you learn as much as you can and grow to fulfill all your dreams. He was of course unable to know what the two kids were planning and dreaming for the future. But even if he was, he would probably advise them the same as he did. On their way back, the Uzumaki siblings encountered the most gloomy face they had ever seen. Just seeing the dark, brooding look on Sasuke's face were enough to make them a little gloomy too, and they would have ignored the boy completely if not for them having heard about the Uchiha massacre a few weeks back and how Sasuke's brother was the perpetrator. Sasuke looked pissed off. Sup Uchiha? Naruto asked nonchalantly as they strolled up to the dark-haired Uchiha who was gazing at the river. Sasuke mumbled something incoherent. Yeah, I completely agree, duck butt. Owie. Naruto-chan punched her brother upon him, insulting Sasuke, and kicked him in the leg too for good measure. Ow 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 ow. Her clone was hopping on one foot around the road, whimpering in pain. What's with you, Uchiha? You look ready to kill someone. You should wipe off that look and get home to train. You know, one day that Uchiha might may not be sufficient enough to land you what you aim for. Why would my brother do such a thing? Sasuke muttered, a piece of paper in hand, slightly surprised that he even bothered talking to the dead last sister. Itachi was a prodigy, a once-in-a-generation genius. Even now I'm expected to surpass him, and he's no longer here. He's the enemy now. Gah! Sasuke tore at his hair. I'm so confused. He said he'd explain it all in this letter, only I need the Sharingan to read anything out of it. Then what the hell are you sitting here whining for? Train yourself to the Sharingan then. It's not like things come naturally to people. You can't just sit and expect the world to open up everything for you. You need to work for it, and work hard for it. If you still can't do it, Work even harder until you can. Sasuke looked pissed off and ready to burst, growing even redder for each word, but eventually deflated before Naruto finished, nodding meekly at her. Cousin Shisui says the same thing. Because we are Uchiha, our main problem is that we expect everything to come to us. Maybe I should try to work for it. I'll ask Shisui if he can help me. Thanks Naru-chan. Unlike your brother, you're very smart, aren't you? Naruto smiled at the Uchiha and turned to leave, grabbing her brother by his earlobe and pulling him with her. Just don't forget that hard work is the strongest and truest path to power, Uchiha. Come on brother, we're going to train too. Ow, uncle. I give. The poor blonde boy yelled in his misery, still jumping on one leg after his sister. A goal huh, brother? I wonder what goal you have to slaughter half our family. Will my goal be worthy enough to let me know yours? Does it even matter? Sasuke shrugged and turned his nose homeward, pocketing the letter he had planned to feed the river with. Naruto. Iruka yelled at the hyperactive boy, using his demon head jutsu to emphasize his anger. This time Naruto had really gone too far. Whenever his sister were not around, the boy went berserk trying to catch everyone's attention by pulling stupid pranks. Like painting the Hokage monument into a festive assortment of colors. The remarkable thing about it though was that he had managed to do so in broad daylight without anyone noticing until he was done. What are you doing here Naruto? The boy was visibly shaken by Iruka's outburst, that jutsu always got under his skin. Ehehehe. Artistic inspiration compelled me? Naruto attempted weakly and Iruka just sighed. Class has started, come on Naruto. Really, what would your sister say to this? In class a hogtied Naruto was put onto the floor. He had attempted to escape when he realized his sister, Creator, would find out about his monumental stunt. Naruto-chan buried her face in her hands, just sighing and vowing to teach her brother some manners. Alright class, thanks to Naruto here, we'll be having a pop quiz on the Henge no Jutsu. Line up everyone. The entire class groaned as one but eventually lined up. One by one the kids walked up to the podium and performed the Henge, turning into a replica of Iruka while the original wrote down notes on each of their performance. When it was Naruto's turn, he grinned mischievously and before his sister could object, the boy channeled a ton of chakra, way more than was really needed for the Henge, and burst into a cloud of smoke that whisked away to leave a very naked, older version of his sister who started flirting with the class teacher. I call this the Oiroke no Jutsu. The girl purred sensually as she lightly tapped the scar-carrying Chunin's chest, causing Iruka to fly backwards and crashing headfirst into the blackboard courtesy of a massive nosebleed. Half a second later Naruto was pounded into the floorboards by a very angry twin. You fucking pervert. She growled as she stomped him to the floor, the boy whimpering and begging pitifully for his life, his jutsu cancelled out by the first blow. Please, no not there I'll leave the details of the beatdown for you to decide. Shudders asterisk. After the class regained composure, and a very bruised Naruto could finally sit down again it continued. Iruka proceeded to explain that it was not long left until the academy students of this year, meaning them, would graduate to become genin. Shikamaru grinned at the prospect, scaring the entire class apart from Naruto who was too stupid to worry, Naruto-chan who knew she could take him down if she needed and Sasuke who actually enjoyed Shika's craziness. Iruka remained oblivious. During their time in the academy, all the students had become intimately familiar with the new Shikamaru. He was the first Nara to actually do something voluntarily, and he was widely known as Creepy Nara among the genin to be. Shikamaru had a habit of freaking people out. He seemed to enjoy frightening the other kids with death threats, smirking as they got injured, inflicting said injuries during spars and otherwise being rather scary. Among all the genin hopeful Shikamaru was the only one who had not gotten torn up by Tora, the #1 hated D-rank mission they ever had the misfortune of being assigned to. Even Tora was frightened by Shikamaru. From the first time the pineapple-haired boy unleashed his bloodthirst upon the poor creature, stunning the cat just from his will to inflict harm alone, Tora had been as mellow as any regular house cat around him. So if even Tora, the terror of D-ranks, was scared of the Nara boy that left the genin to be without much hope. But Shikamaru's personality seemed to flip on a dime whenever there were adults nearby. Shikamaru appeared to be an angel in their eyes. He helped them with chores, complimenting the mothers on their new haircut or new clothes, since with his intellect he remembered any and all details about the people he studied. And the Nara studied all the aspiring genins, much to their fright. So the news that they would all graduate to genin made the entire class apart from a select few beg not to be put on the same team as the Nara or the Uzumaki boy. The first out of fear, the second because their parents said so. So in 2 weeks, we will hold the genin exams. It consists of 3 tests: taijutsu, genjutsu and ninjutsu. In the taijutsu exam, you will be expected to show proficient use of the academy style, or one taijutsu style of your choosing. You will be sparring with a chunin, and he or she will judge your skills and give his evaluation along with me and Mizuki, who will be watching. We will reveal what is expected from you in the genjutsu exam when it starts, but it will be an individual test. The ninjutsu will be a performance test like the taijutsu, only individual. Myself, Mizuki and the Hokage will evaluate your skills using the 3 academy ninjutsu, or 2 jutsu of your choice. 1 academy jutsu is worth 1 point, 1 other jutsu performed correctly is worth 2 points. You need 3 points to pass, but you can accumulate as many as you wish. It will help in determining who you will be placed with if we know your skill level. As Iruka finished, the class was buzzing with excitement, and in Shino Abarame's case that was a literal statement. His bugs were making the boy vibrate, his excitement carrying over from host to symbionts. But this went quite unnoticed due to his position in the class, everyone talking with one another, and the fact that he was nearly completely covered by his jacket and glasses. He did notice the Uzumaki girl casting a glance at him though, smiling. "Misha, Kyubi-chan, the genin exams are in 2 weeks." Naruto hollered out as he entered his apartment, Naruto-chan trudging along behind him and kicking him in the back. "Shut up, don't scream out her name like that. Baka." The boy groaned, but recovered quickly and ran into the apartment, screeching to a halt as he rounded the corner and promptly stormed back out. "We'll be back in an hour." He called and pulled his sister along, her protesting and complaining that she hadn't even entered yet. "Did you hear something, Q-chan?" A purple-haired head bobbed as she spoke from under the covers, and the only response was a soft moan from Kyubi as she pushed Misha back to the task at hand. Or between her legs, as it were. Divas weren't as terrible as she knew from the past, it seemed. She sighed contently, trying to put the images of a fox girl and shadow-clothed girl together in bed out of her head. She started contemplating what kind of jutsus they would be using for the ninjutsu portion. She would be the only one doing the ninjutsu part. If everything went as she hoped it would, her brother would get an automatic pass due to him being a jutsu. If not, they were both screwed. Screwed. No. Focus. She shook her head vehemently. Damn her brother. She looked at him only to see him drooling at whatever thoughts he was having. She glared and smacked him in the head. Stop thinking about those two and get to work. We need to practice our taijutsu, you know. Several hours later, 2 exhausted, bruised and dirty kids were sitting at Ikariku's ramen stand, wolfing down the bowls of divine food eagerly. Misha smiled at her protege from the shadows across the street. With the oncoming genin exam she would have to step up their training. So far she had only taught them chakra control, kage and enmei bunshins. Kyubi had focused on teaching them the fox-style taijutsu. However, they had both perfected the twins in the tasks they had given them. Their chakra control was as good as they would ever get it, and their taijutsu style was more or less without any flaw. As a style it had several weak points to exploit of course, but Misha figured the twins would eventually notice that and learn other styles as well. They were quite ready for the exam, she knew. But she wanted them to have surprises up their sleeves. Time-space warping? Elemental manipulation? She saw so many different possibilities within the energy matrix of the world. Too much for one person to learn. There were many ways to end up walking a path of corruption. That was the essence of demon worlds, of course. But there were some paths. The smoke around Misha embraced her completely and faded into the darkness, pulling the purple-haired girl along with it. Naruto-chan stopped wolfing down her ramen for a moment and looked behind her, peering directly at the spot Misha had stood not a second earlier. Seeing nothing, she shrugged and returned to her current mission, which they codenamed, "Eat as much ramen as you can." "You want us to what?" The blonde girl was furious. Misha and Kyubi had decided that she and her brother should individually succeed the genin exam without using any of their taught skills, only the academy basics. The Academy Bunshin being the exception. The kids could use Cage Bunshin instead due to their inability to use the regular Bunshin. Why do you want us to look like completely lame, mediocre students? We've been training so hard to show off our skills. Misha was grinning like the cat who ate the canary at that statement and explained. That's exactly why. When you get put onto a mediocre team, you and your brother will be able to complete the missions in record time, thus giving you both more time to practice and learn more skills. When someone higher up eventually realize you are more powerful than you let on, they will be more likely to accept you as a ninja because you show you are being skilled at deception, subterfuge and also, looking underneath the underneath in addition to being extremely powerful. The twins nodded as they couldn't argue with the diva's logic. Alright, so Academy Taijutsu, Kawarimi, Henshin and Cage Bunshin then. Kyuubi cocked her head at her containers. Henshin? Naruto grinned. It's actually a fluke. Me and sis can't do Henge either for similar reasons as the Bunshin, however with some of your chakra, and a load more of our own we use the Henshin instead which is nearly identical. The only difference is, it physically transforms us instead of just making us appear different. Not even Hinata or Kiba can see through it, they've tried. Shika says it's amazing and should be impossible. Kyuubi nodded. Just be careful about your output of chakra. Remember the chakra control lessons, no need to spend more chakra than you need. Kyuubi realized the geniusness of using her chakra to make an actual transformation. She would check more into that. Perhaps they could learn some of her kitsune genjutsus. Naruto bounced from one foot to the other as he watched the sparring. There were 5 Chunins sparring with the students, and the matches lasted roughly 5 minutes each, one ending every minute, giving the Chunins about 1 minute before the next to evaluate with Mizuki while Uruka was observing the others. Both Uzumakis were busy studying their class top students, the Klein heirs and high-score students. Shino Aburame was mediocre at best, however he was the Aburame heir, so he was a bug user. He would score perfect on the other 2 tests and pass. Kiba, of course, nearly beat his Chunin examinator after having taken Naruto's lesson to heart and practice before he preach. He'd become really strong. Naru-chan actually blushed when the Chunin had to start fighting back and tore off the boy's jacket in the process, leaving the Inuzuka in only a mesh over shirt. Sasuke Uchiha was the top taijutsu expert in the class. He utilized the Uchiha form flawlessly and he actually did defeat his Chunin examinator, much to the surprise of everyone present. But even more surprising was that the boy was smiling at the praise Uruka gave him. Sasuke never smiled. Both Naruto and Kiba looked at the sky in fear. Was it falling? The third highest ranking boy in taijutsu in their class, Choji Akamichi, was performing quite good, but without his family ninjutsu which his clan prided themselves on, he didn't do as good as he could have done. Naru-chan smiled as she observed his match though. The boy had tenacity and a never-say-die spirit. That's the reason she liked Choji. He was an honest, loyal friend and never gave up. He also supported Shikamaru always, despite being alienated from most other students because of that friendship. The only other noticeable male student was of course the aforementioned Nara, who freaked out the Chunin examinator through taunts and using a rather strange form of taijutsu that the Chunin couldn't defend against because it seemed to exploit any and all weak spots. The Chunin actually fled in fear after being put into the ground. Nobody realized that Shikamaru's genius allowed him to change his taijutsu on the fly, and due to his training he was able to switch between several taijutsu forms whenever he saw a weak spot one particular form could utilize. The taunting was just for fun. Among the females, the 2 most prominent students were Hinata Hyuga with her Jiyuken style that had the Chunin limping off the stage at the end, and Sakura Haruno whose basic academy style was perfect, along with the pink-haired girl's impossibly agile body that allowed for some rather unique moves the girl had added to the style herself. The Chunin was quite roughed up at the end, and been unable to lay a finger on her. Ino Yamanaka and Tomoki Uchiha also performed quite good, although Tomoki managed to trip in her own feet once due to nervousness as her cousin was watching attentively. Sasuke just smiled encouragingly at her though. Naruto and Kiba once again looked to the sky, cowering before it as if shielding themselves from the inevitable fall. Ino performed some similar moves to Sakura but not as practiced or agile as the pink-haired girl. The rest of the students performed in various degrees of terrible. The Uzumaki twins had been placed at the end of the line, so their turn came up almost at the same time. Once again sighing and cursing their secret sensei, the twins stepped up and fought each their chunin. Naru-chan, deciding to stretch her sensei's promise, mimicked Sakura's earlier movements and even did or invented a couple of other moves that made the pinkette envious. The chunin was hopelessly outclassed by the academy student. They were not technically academy-style forms, but they were not part of any other known taijutsu form she had seen either, so it was a gray area. Naruto too played the mimic game. Having seen Shikamaru's stunts and using his own speed, he dodged and blocked any move the chunin made against him, which were a good deal many more than the other students had suffered. It was to be expected. Most chunin knew Naruto as the demon brat, so it was a given that they would wish to beat him up when the chance presented itself. Naruto just smirked at the idea though and channeled a minuscule amount of Kyuubi's chakra, just enough to grow canines and red eyes. The chunin panicked, giving Naruto plenty of room to thoroughly lay down a beating on the man, to which Shikamaru cheered encouragingly on. "Kick the troublesome guys," asked Naruto. "Though, leave some for me too, will ya?" That wild grin appeared again and most of the genin hopefuls shuffled a few feet away. Naru-chan was grinning too. A side effect of her brother drawing on Kyuubi was that her own features changed along with his, and vice versa held true too. "You see, my brother and we share a special bond. Whenever he gets angry, for some reason I get so eager to hurt someone," she said nonchalantly and upped her speed. While the academy taijutsu style was rather basic and easy to discern, especially to those who already knew it, meaning most ninja in Konoha, neither of the two chunin examinators ever managed to put a hand on the Uzumaki twins during the test, or ever dared to again in the future. The chunins were rather beat up in the end, but they still stood. "Excellent work everyone. Tomorrow we'll have the gen and ninjutsu tests with your results granted at the end." "Good work everyone," Iruka said and gave his students a big smile and thumbs up, not showing any concern for the twins' frightening display. The next day, while waiting for the exam to start, Naruto and Naru-chan were maybe just a little bit worried. Genjutsu was their worst subject, and this test was also the one nobody was prepared for. They could encounter anything inside that room. Also, every student noticed while they sat in the hallway outside the exam room that nobody ever came out of the room once they had entered. It was starting to make them all a little nervous as one by one, students went in and disappeared. Up came Naru-chan's turn and she entered the large room. It looked similar to their own classroom apart from one door to the side. She saw the door close but caught a glimpse of the back of Tomoki's head and relaxed a little. "Welcome Naru-chan," Mizuki said, smiling at the girl. "The genjutsu test is actually quite simple. You have 2 minutes to find out what is wrong in this room and release the genjutsu. Every student's test is different though. Go." Naru-chan looked around. A potted plant in each window, the desks, walls with generic paintings and tests, the blackboard with genjutsu exam written on it. She looked hopeless for a moment until she sighed. "I'm sorry I can't find it, so I'll just do this." Charging up a large amount of chakra, she sent it pulsing outwards in all directions, a disruptive shockwave that broke the genjutsu on a single plant in the window that was actually withered. Had she looked closer, she would have seen that each plant had one or more leaves lying around it, and this plant's leaves were dead while the plant looked healthy. But she didn't, and instead brute forced her way out of the genjutsu exam. Pointing to the plant, she smiled. "Found it." A stunned Mizuki just pointed to the door. "Pass through the door for the next exam. Wait in the room until you're called up." As Naru-chan exited the door, she wondered if her brother would manage the genjutsu exam. She figured he would know once she made the Kage Bunshin in the ninjutsu exam either way, so if he hadn't realized by then, he would. Naruto entered the room after his sister exited, since the little light bulb in the hallway switched from red to green, signaling the next student to come in. Once again he was the last to approach, but he didn't worry that much. His sister would have made a commotion if anything was wrong, since they couldn't be affected by genjutsu thanks to the Kyuubi acting like a disrupting source within them. Genjutsu on something other than his internal senses were still capable of fooling them though, which they had in Naru-chan's case. Not that he knew that, yet. Being given the same test, he looked around and didn't notice anything particular. A bunch of dead plants, the desks, non-specific plants and various record exams on the walls, the blackboard. He pouted. "I can use any means to find out, right? Even ninjutsu?" Mizuki nodded. "Any means necessary, Naruto." Naruto formed a hand seal and spawned a couple of cage bunshin and sent them throughout the room. Although he knocked a third one out so it poofed. Too many is just a nuisance. He mumbled. Naru-chan grinned and made a single clone that poofed away in a split second while inside the waiting room. Outside, Naruto smiled and the clone closest to the plants waved a hand. "Boss, look here." Continuing the facade, Naruto walked over and, giving the plants a look, he channeled his chakra to drop the genjutsu on the plants, revealing the healthy ones and one still dead. "Is this it then, Mizuki?" The Chunin examiner smiled and nodded. "Skilled work, Naruto. Your sister is through that door. You can enter, but you got to wait until she is done before following her. You'll be called out when it's your turn." Naruto nodded and walked over to the door, entering and grinning widely at his sister. "Good work, brother." She smiled too, but her name was called up before she could say anything. Then her brother's name was called up too, and puzzled they both entered. Yes? You called both of us?" At the desk sat Iruka and Mizuki, as well as the Hokage fully dressed in his white and red robes with the pipe lying at the table in front of them. "I decided to let the two of you take the final exam together, since I figure, since that boy is actually a jutsu of yours, you'd be inclined to be on the same team as him, am I wrong?" The Hokage smiled warmly at the twins who were a little shocked that he knew about the Enmei. Hokage-sama, how did you?" Naruto started but couldn't find the right words to continue. "Ah, don't worry, a little divine bird told me, and explained the reason too. Seeing as he is your clone though, Naru-chan, that gives you an automatic 2 points out of a needed number of 6. 6 because there is still 2 of you, from what I understand of that jutsu. So now that you performed the first jutsu, want to continue?" Naruto stepped up. "She doesn't only know me, though. She also knows this one." Forming a cross with his fingers, 2 clones popped into existence. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," Naruto said proudly. Iruka looked intrigued while the Hokage smiled secretly, having been the one to teach Naruto the basics of that jutsu. "Kage Bunshin, you say? Step up here." Mizuki motioned for a clone to approach. The clone walked up and put out his hand so they could all feel it. "I see. So you did master it, good work," the Hokage said and smiled. So far the twins had been regular students while in their class, Naruto actually going as far as being the school joke, and yet, these 2 kids in front of them looked to be on another level entirely. "Naruto." His sister whacked him over the head. "We promised, remember? Now look what you did, go and reveal the Kage Bunshin like that." Naruto grinned sheepishly. Sorry sis, I kinda forgot that." "Oh well, go over there." She pointed to the other corner of the room, and once he got into position, they switched place. "Kawarimi no Jutsu," they both said. "Both of us know it, just a little hard to show who's performing it when it's us who switch." They looked around and both noticed the forehead protectors lying on the table. They switched with one each, sitting crouched on the desk. "We could do this though," they said in unison, having popped up in front of Mizuki and Iruka respectively. Naruto was grinning hugely at the mortified look on Mizuki's face. "Sorry, must have scared ya half to death." The white-haired Chunin shook his head, although his face was rivaling his hair color at the moment. "Very good. You already have the 6 points required to pass. Do you know the hench?" They both nodded and turned into perfect replicas of Iruka and Mizuki, not bothering to reveal that they become actual physical copies instead of just a genjutsu wall around their original selves. "Very good then. You don't have any more jutsus to reveal? It could get you on better teams." "Sorry Iruka-sensei, but we don't know any other jutsus yet." "But don't worry, we'll do good just the same." The twins smiled and picked up the forehead protectors they switched with earlier from the floor they ended up on. "We'll be taking these then, right?" The Hokage nodded and smiled. Those 2 sure were lively, he thought. "I'll leave the teachers in charge of making the teams then, I got other business to attend to. Farewell." Later in the teacher's lounge. "What do you think?" one of the teachers asked as he showed the rest of the present people his idea for the genin teams. I think I would be more partial to this suggestion," another said and gave his own list of names. Iruka looked over the presented ideas with a slight frown. In either team listing's case the Uzumaki twins appeared to be put alone. He hadn't come up with any decent ideas himself due to the irregular number of students, and Mizuki didn't seem too eager to suggest a list himself, so they didn't have any other choice but to vote for one of the other teachers' idea. He looked them over while considering, accepting the third idea presented by the math teacher, although he immediately rejected it in his mind for being elitist and favoring the smartest kids by placing them on same teams. That sort of shit would never fly with the Hokage anyway. I'm going to have to go with this one myself. He eventually decided and pointed to the first suggested teams. Mizuki, how about you? The white-haired teacher looked over the lists one more time and then nodded. I agree, it seems to be the fairest decision. After a quick vote, Iruka and Mizuki bowed to the other teachers of this year's Genin hopeful and left with the team suggestions they would present to the Hokage. Team 7, Naruto Uzumaki, F. Naruto Uzumaki, M. Team 8, Iruka sighed in annoyance. What's wrong, Iruka? Mizuki gave his friend a concerned look. I just don't think these teams are fair at all to Naru-chan and her brother. Mizuki nodded. True enough. But face it, why do you think the other teachers would approve of those two at all? I think it's safer for all involved if they are on their own team, at least for now. Iruka couldn't argue with that. He figured he would try talking to the Hokage about it after they presented the team suggestions. Those lousy, good-for-nothing teachers. I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind, see if I won't. Misha gave her brother a piece of her demon cloak. Hold me, or bad things will happen. Shoden grasped the offered piece of cloth and held his sister back while she raged. Let me at him. Let me show him, I'll bash them real good, let me at them. Shoden let go of the cloak at her insistence and she fell face first into the floorboards. Ouch, I told you to hold it. Why'd y'all let go? She pouted and rubbed her nose. Shoden just shrugged at her. Well, I guess I should at least accompany them then. Q said, getting up from the chair. An empty container of instant ramen stood on the table. If the Inuzuka can have ninkin dogs, why can't the Uzumaki have ninkin foxes? She gave a devious grin as she morphed into her fox form, her hair flowing down her back to turn into her three tails as the sound of bones cracking and changing place. To any mortal it would probably sound gruesome, but the diva siblings looked on impassively as Misha mulled it over. I guess that should work. Unfortunately, it might cause our protégés to be even more alienated from their peers. I believe they would need a sensei that won't judge them by word of mouth alone. I think I know just the one, Shoden. Find that wannabe clone of mine. What's her name again? Mitsu. Mito. Air. She sweat dropped, anime style, and just sighed. You know what I mean. Shoden blinked his eyes twice, his eye color switching from pitch black to a luminescent glow, projecting images that flashed each time he blinked. It eventually settled on a purple-haired woman wearing a trenchcoat, fishnet clothing, ninja sandals and shin guards. Misha assumed she didn't even wear any underwear. She sighed. I'm gonna have a little chat with her. Zoom out so I can see roughly where she is. Another blink by Shoden and the view switched to the planet itself. Misha eye twitched. I'm warning you. He gave a tiny smile in response, but another blink of his eyes and the projection was showing a dango shop at the outskirts of Konoha. I'll be back tonight. Don't wait up, kids. She gave a grin as the shadows around her wrapped around her and she poofed away. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.